Hello and welcome to the 155th edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm the professor, Matt Perkins. And a quick flare screen across the Harpeth River from me here in the Music City, it's our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton.
I love flare screens. So it's going to be an exciting night because we get to preview one of the most fun conferences in all of college football as far as offense goes. So get to take a look at the Pirate tonight. So that's going to be awesome.
I've got some predictions for the Pirate that he might not want to hear, but we can't get into that until we introduce the third amigo in the second city, a man who thinks that the Utah mascot is the Utahs. It's our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook.
Yeah, when we were off air, I was kind of recounting a story when I was, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around then. Back when those Rick Majerus basketball teams were ranking the Final Four. Dumb kid from Iowa, I didn't know the Utah Utes, and so I just see UTES, and I was like, oh, you of course pronounce that Utahs. So I thought it was the Utah Utahs.
Speaking of Rick Majerus, can I tell a quick story?
Always.
Because, okay, so when we were in college, me along with one of our other friends, Ben, used to work basketball games at the Kohl Center in Madison. And for one of the games, Rick Majerus was Rick Majerus and Dick Vitale were there calling the game. And Rick Majerus, we pick him up from his hotel. We're driving him to the Kohl Center. And he pops open his briefcase. I'm like, oh, I figure he's got, like game notes in there or whatever. Do you know his briefcase is filled with, Josh?
No.
Bags of Cheetos.
I mean, he had three papers. He had 3 papers, and no joke, he had a dozen the mini bags that you put in your lunch bag of the little Cheetos. I mean, God bless Rick Majerus.
I love Rick Majerus.
He was a different character, to say the least.
Yeah, and he is missing the college basketball world, but we are here for college football, and it is our final set of conference previews tonight. And we're going to get to the Mountain West a little bit later, but we're going to start with the Pac-12 up north. We're going to go alphabetically like we have in the rest of our previews. So that means starting with Cal, which means that it is my turn to get started. And I'm excited about this Cal Bear team this year. In Justin Wilcox's first year in Berkeley last year, the Golden Bears had about as good of a season as a 5-7 team could possibly have. Now in his second year, Wilcox has a lot of continuity on offense, but some question marks over on the defensive side of the ball. Ross Bowers returns at quarterback, and he has some good weapons out at his disposal, even with the transfer of Demetrius Robertson to his home state of Georgia. Tailback Patrick Laird is a guy to keep an eye on. He had over 1,100 yards on the ground last year, and that was while he was splitting time with Trey Watson, who has since transferred to Texas. The line should be in good shape as well. They have 7 players returning with starting experience. Offensive coordinator Bo Baldwin in his second season with the team. I'm expecting a little bit more of a wide-open system this year, more akin to the up-tempo offense that he ran while he was head coach at Eastern Washington out on the red turf. Defensively, though, that is where Justin Wilcox has always made his hay. And coming up as a defensive coordinator in the Pac-12, his team greatly improved from 2016 to 2017, and I'm expecting some more improvement this coming season, even with some new faces in the lineup. The strength of the defense is going to be in the linebackers, one of the strongest units in the conference. They're led by seniors Jordan Kanazik and Alex Funchess. The Bears linebackers are everywhere in Wilcox's 3-4. Where I am concerned for this team is on the D-line. They're very young. The only nose tackle they really have on this team is senior Chris Palmer. He's the only true one technique guy, and that is critical in the way that Justin Wilcox wants to play defense. So they're going to need to get a couple guys that can spell Palmer at the nose if they're going to be really hold up against the run. They're also going to need to improve on special teams if they want to win some of those close games. They were genuinely awful last year in punt coverage. In the bottom 20 of all of college football, they ceding more than 10 yards per punt return. They also lost their kicker to graduation, so they had better get a good leg on campus quick. They opened the season at home against North Carolina, followed up with a trip to Provo. Both of those games are going to be good early season litmus tests to see how much they have grown in the offseason. Personally, I'm expecting them to win both games. I'm very, very bullish on this Cal team. But, then again, I would not be shocked if they were upset in one or both of these games. So in the North, though.
Now, Matt, I got a question, though, for you. You didn't answer what I always care about for Cal football. Who is Who's the most likely player to drive a injury card around?
Well, I mean, I assume you have to stick at the tailback position with that. So I'm going to go with Patrick Laird. I mean, just following in the footsteps of Marshawn Lynch.
That's good.
But in the North, they're going to get their biggest division foes at home. They have to the only North teams they are on the road for are Wazoo and Oregon State, both very winnable games. Road games at Arizona and in the Coliseum are going to be tough sledding. I'm a little bit more bullish, like I said, on Cal than most, but their schedule is pretty darn tough. I still think they're going to go 8-4 though, and surprise a lot of people.
Ooh.
So we're going to head now over to.
If they go 8-4, that might be Wilcox COI right there.
Well, maybe. So we're going to throw it over to a team though that has a new head coach, but who was already on staff with Mario Cristobal in Oregon. Coach, how are we feeling about things in Eugene this year?
Well, that Willie Taggart guy, if you've ever heard of him, he left to Florida State. And stop me if you've ever heard this one before. Oregon got new uniforms. I know you're shocked. They actually do look. They're probably some of the best of the Oregon combinations that they've tried out there. They have those giant numbers, and honestly, I didn't think I would like those, but I kind of do. And oddly enough, they're less obnoxious than the other ones that they've had. But anyway, I digress. So Mario Cristobal looks to lead the Ducks back into contention in the Pac-12, taking over in his first full season. The good news for Oregon is you have a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback, Justin Herbert. If he stays healthy, he's shown that he can lead Oregon to in the 7 games he played last year before going down. Oregon was 6-1 and averaged 52.1 points per game. In the 5 games that he missed, they were 1-4 and averaged 15 points per game. Yikes! He brings a lot to the table, and it's going to be exciting if they can keep him healthy and upright. So, in the backfield behind him, another name to look out for is Tony Brooks James. He has a national championship ring from the track team, actually. And then also redshirt freshman C.J. Verdell. And he kind of draws comparisons to former running back Michael James. Receiving core, that's the question mark. So you have a lot of unknowns, a lot of talented, a lot of fast unknowns, but again, unknowns. Tight end Jacob Breland is going to be Herbert's favorite target. He's probably going to be the one that gets most of the targets. But, you have Dylan Mitchell, who is from Memphis, and Brandon Schooler, who are their returners. But, again, it's not quite enough to make this receiving core not a question mark. There's going to have to be some people to step up. So, looking at the defensive side of the ball, you have defensive MVP Troy Dye, who is an absolute studded inside linebacker, something Oregon's been lacking for a long time, a presence in the middle or actually a defense that could dominate. And, by Big 12 standards, I think this defense, I should say, I don't want to get ahead of myself there, but they hired Jim Leavitt and, not surprisingly enough, the first person to emerge and blossom as a star is an inside linebacker. So under Leavitt, they're going to look to have one of the most dominant and powerful defenses in the Pac-12, something that is foreign to the Oregon Duck program. Also, outside linebackers Justin Hollis and Lamar Winston are going to look to wreak a lot of havoc. Hopefully, in the pass rush game, you have defensive end Jalen Jelks. He thought about going to the NFL draft early. He had after recording 15 tackles for loss as a junior, but decided against it, decided to come back. You have a bunch of sophomore linemen, Jordan Scott and Austin Filau. They come back as returning starters. They are brought back both cornerbacks, Thomas Graham and DeMondre Lenore. I think I got that right. As all those starters, they haven't really built much depth behind them. That's something they are continuing to work on. So as long as they can keep guys healthy on either side of the ball, I think they're going to end up being very, very talented. Also, the schedule sets up well for them. They have 3 really bland non-conference matchups. And Texas A&M is one that they can thank for backing out of a contracted series. They also host Washington and Stanford in conference play, so that helps to have them to have those 2 most important games in the division in Autzen Stadium. So, I think the strength, obviously, with Oregon is going to be their backfield. And then I think you're going to see Dylan Mitchell make a lot of plays. So don't be surprised if the Ducks are in contention come late November for the Pac-12 championship bid. So really a lot of talent, a lot of unknown talent. The defense is emerging and could be one of the best in the conference under Jim Leavitt. We'll see how he does in year 2. But I'm very, very excited, actually, about this Duck team, not only about the uniforms, but I think they're going to be a good, fun, exciting team to watch. I think Mario Cristobal has got this team going in the right direction. He just needs to continue to recruit and build his depth.
Well, talk about a team that needs to build something. That's Oregon State. They've been the dregs of the conference for a little while now, and they've got a new coach, Josh.
Yeah, they do. They got a beloved alma mater who was a part of the rebuild as a player. Now he'll be trying to do it as a coach. But in terms of what he inherited as a team, skill position has a little bit of talent, highlighted by JUCO All-American quarterback Jake Luton. He missed most of last year with an injury, but the offensive line is a big concern. And building from there, not a big concern, but a huge concern is the defense. They were 121st in total D and 128th in scoring D a season ago. Without any improvement on this side of the ball, I struggle to see any path to relevance for the Beavers this year. The silver lining is the D has some pieces to be at least marginally improved. They've got a pair of talented corners, Xavier Crawford and Dwayne Williams, that are back after missing most of last year with their own injuries. The safeties are also pretty good. Jalen Moore and David Morris each had 75 tackles, good for second on the team last year. Admittedly, though, 150 tackles from your safeties is not exactly a great sign for what is happening in front of them. The linebacker situation, it isn't as good as that back end, but there is some talent there. The real concern, though, is going to be at defensive line for this new staff. It isn't overly talented, and it's rather thin on depth. So if Oregon State wins games this year, it'll be from the O, putting up a ton of points on the secondary, getting some timely turnovers. But I think that D line is going to be getting just eaten alive in this division when there's 3 fantastic offensive lines at Oregon, Stanford, and Washington.
Well, speaking of Stanford, Coach, should be another year on the farm where we see a lot of Reggie Love.
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he was the bell cow and big-time playmaker a year ago, and I don't really see that being any sort of difference. So, they're going to be they're going to be actually more potent than they usually are offensively. What we're used to with Stanford is physical running, heavy running game, heavy personnel packages, lots of 22, maybe sometimes even 23 personnel packages. And lots of just pounded on the ground with Christian McCaffrey and Bryce Love and stuff like that. But I think they're going to be able to kind of spread the ball out more and kind of be more of a balanced attack and just kind of more explosive on that side of the ball. And, that's due in part to them getting back KJ Costello, probably one of the most talented quarterbacks they've had since Andrew Luck. And, of course, Bryce Love, that doesn't hurt. He was a Heisman Trophy runner-up. You have your top 4 receivers, and actually you get your place kicker back as well. So, Stanford feels like they can take more chances because, they cross 50, they're in range type situation at the kicker position. So, they love that. So, Costello took over for Keller Christ. Obviously last year that was the story, kind of found his rhythm and kind of just won his way into the job. He was coming in for a struggling Christ and, never relinquished it. He's 6'5", 220 pounds. I got a big frame, big arm, live arm. Can do a lot more things that Chris could do or couldn't do, excuse me. And so much to the fact that Kelly and Chris just decided, hey, I'm probably not going to beat this guy out, so I'm just going to go ahead and transfer on over to Tennessee. So, and that's what he did. He had his season high 212 yards against TCU. It was a banner year or banner half year really for KJ Costello. Bryce Love, again, he's probably the Heisman Trophy favorite, or at least one of them, at least one of the legitimate ones. He had 2,118 rushing yards last year. He was second best total in Pac-12 history. You have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He is, quote, a possession receiver, but he also caught 9 touchdowns last year. Trent Irwin chipped in with 43 passes caught. Osiris St. Brown, redshirted due to injury, but he's extremely talented and somebody that can stretch the field. Again, not any surprise. Stanford stacked at the tight end position with Colby Parkinson and Caden Smith last year combined for 9 touchdowns apiece in an offense that, if you look at the stats, really didn't throw the ball a whole lot. When you have Bryce Love, I don't blame you. They have one of the better offensive lines in the Pac-12. Probably even if you look at it nationwide, they probably have one of the best around. They have 4 starters coming back and a lot of depth as well. You have freshman All-American Walker Little is the superstar of that line. He's an NFL talent. I remember seeing him at these rivals camps and just see him absolutely manhandle and dominate people. And quite frankly, it surprised me that he went to Stanford. I think it was a great opportunity for him to get a great education and play for such a great program with David Shaw and then Mike Bloomgren. And Mike Bloomgren has since moved on to Rice University. So again, we'll see how their new offensive line coach fits in with this bunch. So actually, Stanford's offense is going to be explosive, and you're going to have a lot of guys that touch the ball and can do something different. So let's look at defense, okay? It's going to be kind of questionable. They're going to kind of come back to the pack as far as that goes. They had on his defensive line, you have Javon Swan. He counted for just 1.5 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss last year. He's the leading guy coming back on the depth chart, so not a lot of experience up front. True freshmen you think about them and on defense, and if you have to use true freshmen, you're probably in trouble. Thomas Booker, again, could be somebody that is going to have to be counted on early, and he has a lot of pass rushing potential. That's kind of the thing with defensive ends nowadays. You kind of recruit these smaller, faster guys that are converted linebackers so they can get to the quarterback. Thomas Booker is one of those types, and he may find his niche as a freshman. Certainly, linebackers in a little bit better shape, and the secondary is as well. They played a 2-4-5 scheme last year. Might be, just they have to do something to kind of get their best guys on the field. So, Bobby Okirky, I think I said that right, is an honorable mention, is all Pac-12. He's a name to look for. He's one of 3 fifth-year seniors at the linebacker spot, so probably the most experienced position group on the defense. Sean Barton, he went down. He had a season-ending injury last year, only played 2.5 games, and went down against San Diego State. Justin Reed and Quentin Meeks, they're off to the NFL, but they have a little bit more depth built in than the guys up front with their hands in the dirt. So, again, return of plate kicker. He kicks plates, guys. Here's a name that we want to add to the all-name team. He's definitely the kicker for the all-name team, Jet Toner.
Oh, that's amazing.
Great name. It's a great name.
Yeah. He was 21 of 26 on field goals. He was and then Jake Bailey, second team all Pac-12 as the punter. So anytime you have a name like Jet Toner, I would probably kick 3 field goals unnecessarily in a game just so I could hear his name called over the loudspeaker. What an incredible name. So that's a huge weapon if you have a great punter and a great kicker. Again, just guaranteed points and guaranteed field position flips. So for Stanford, yes, they're going to be more, the good news is they're going to be more explosive on offense, Matt, Josh, but obviously the bad news is up front they're going to struggle. And they're going to have to find creative ways to get their linebackers on the field because that is the most talented group, most experienced group on that side of the ball. So we will see if they have some luck doing that and being able to stop some of these high-powered attacks with the lack of experience they have. This talent lack of experience could develop, but you never know really. So I'm excited to kind of see what happens on the farm. I'm really kind of excited to see this offense now. Bryce Love is one of my favorite players to watch, and being in the Pac-12, they come on after Georgia a lot of times, so I'm able to get a glimpse of some of these West Coast teams, and that's why I'm kind of starting to dig the Pac-12 a little bit more than I have in the past.
All right. Well, next I think we have to head to the team that is probably the favorite in the North, and a team that I've seen a lot of people prognosticating to be in the college football playoff this year in the Washington Huskies. And Josh, are you as high on them as a lot of the national media is?
I am, and there's a lot to like in Puget Sound. So just to kind of recap last season, they started out 6-0, got to 5th in the nation, only to end 10-3, and I think a lot of people kind of had this feeling of, oh, well, I guess that Pac-12 title in 2017 was the real thing. This program isn't back yet. And to me, that's a grave mistake. Their 3 losses last year were all one-score games. 2 were on the road, and the other was the Fiesta Bowl. And sure, losing to Arizona State was kind of strange last season, but the Bluetooth isn't exactly a brain-dead coach. I mean, he's no Tyrone Willingham for those Husky fans that like to listen to our show. So with that in mind, the Huskies are clearly a contender, not just for the Pac-12, but for the playoffs because they return so much from these last 2. Thank you for that. From these last 2 outstanding ball clubs. They got 7 starters back on offense, including Jake Browning, who has won, just 39 games in his career. His touchdown numbers imploded, going from 43 to 19 between 2016 and 17. But the receiving core was heavily banged up a year ago, so I think that's going to normalize a little bit. Also back is the stud Myles Gaskin. He's already got over 4,000 rushing yards in his career and should end as UW's all-time leading rusher when it's all said and done. The O-line is one of the best in the nation, so all they need is some receivers to emerge. While that's not a cakewalk, I got to trust Peterson and Browning to be able to get the new guys to fit right in. Defensively, Washington has by far the best defensive line and secondary in the league. Like receiver, if they find some guys to at least be serviceable at linebacker, this D will become championship caliber. Without more at linebacker or wide receiver, not ready to say the Huskies will be in the Final Four like some of those people, but they are a legit threat to win this exciting Pac-12 North in the league, and we'll take it from there.
All right. Well, finally, we have to head out to the Palouse then, where Coach, it might be a tough year for the Cougars out at Washington State.
Yeah, it really, very well could be. Mike Leach has done a tremendous job up there since he took over. They've won 26 games in the last 3 years and have finished no worse than 3rd in the Pac-12 North. So a lot to build on, but you said it could be a struggle. One of the biggest reasons is you're losing, or not losing, you've already lost your record-setting quarterback Luke Falk. So you're going to have to find a replacement, something that you've been comfortable at that position for the last 18 years with Luke Falk, and I feel like he's been there 18 years. But you have Gardner Minshew. He's a grad transfer from East Carolina. He probably looks to be the most promising short-term solution until they can find somebody. Also defense, it's even worse shape because you lose Hercules Mataafa. He's one bad Mataafa. And more importantly, Alex Grinch, your coordinator, somebody that could take a lot of that, I don't want to say no talent, but just unknown, unproven, low-ranked talent and turn them into a formidable defense as far as Pac-12 standards go. So he leaves as well. So they were one of the worst in the country, actually, when he got there. And then they actually became one of the best in the Pac-12. So, again, the quarterback situation is going to be interesting. Replacing the quarterback position there, who knows? I mentioned Gardner Minshew, but you also have Trey Tinsley, Anthony Gordon, both redshirt juniors, true freshman Cameron Cooper. And, just out of those four, somebody's got to emerge. Gordon and Tinsley came out of there came out of the spring as front runners. Cameron Cooper, I'm sure, is making his stake to the claim. But, Minshew would probably be the guy. If I had to guess, he might, just to get him kind of over that hump, and then Cooper will probably take the reins, maybe if one of these seniors, which will then be seniors next year when we're previewing. My prediction is Cooper is going to be the starter. So, as you know, the air raid attack rarely runs the ball, but James Williamson, look at me. James Williams is not a bad option there at the tailback if they had to throw it. He's a junior, and he rushed for 395 yards last season, which in this air raid attack is that's a stud. So Tay Martin also caught 6 touchdowns at the receiver spot in his final 6 games. He's rangy, he's athletic, and he's just a sophomore. So he could be one of the top targets for whichever one of those 4 quarterbacks I named win the job. They're going to have Tay Martin to throw to. They also have Renard Bell, Jameer Calvin, Robert Lewis, and Kyle Sweet, all options in the passing game. So it's going to be there's not going to be a lack of talent at the receiver spot. So let's look at the O-line. Let's look at the Hogs, the big boys. They have a new position coach and 3 new starters. Left tackle Andre Dillard is probably the rock that's coming back. And if you're going to have anybody come back, might as well be your left tackle. Also, your center is pretty important. They call him, quote, the quarterback of the offense, whatever it is. Fred Mauigoa. I'm having trouble with these names. Maybe I'm not a bad modifier. Defensively, they got a new coordinator, Tracy Clays. You guys have heard this name before, being Big Ten guys.
Yeah. Always nice to see him back. I think he kind of got a raw deal. I know was just very, very, very conservative, small Kansas guy, trying to make it work in very, very liberal Twin Cities. It was a weird marriage. Having that experience with all the players kicked off the team and then the player protest and all that, I don't think the university handled it well. I don't think the team handled it well. I don't think Clays handled it well. But if you just look at the X's and O's and the performance of the Golden Gopher football team, he was a really good coach.
Absolutely. And, they need some help, and he's probably the guy to do it. They were top 10 nationally in 2 categories, tackles for loss and total turnovers. They had 7, and they averaged 7.9 per game tackles per loss, and they had 28 total turnovers. So Nnadi Aguayo is going to be likely the replacement up front for Hercules Matafaha. And the good news for this defense is, you can lean on your linebackers, much like Stanford. They have this is probably their most experienced, most talented group in this unit this year. So they got Peyton Pueller back for a 6th season. He got a medical hardship waiver. They have a ton of youth at the middle linebacker spot: Jahad Woods, Justice Rogers, and Dylan Sherman. A lot of guys that are going to be around for a while that could also become big-time names in Tracy Clay's system. You have Jalen Thompson as a safety, kind of that leader in the secondary. He led the Cougars last year in tackles with 73 and also picked off 4 passes. They have a lot of good unknown depth, but really solid talent to work with for Clays. So, again, the cupboard's not completely bare. Losing Hercules is a rather large, figuratively and literally, loss and hole in your defense. But, they'll find ways to get scheme around it. So what's going to happen? Bowl eligible has got to be the goal. It's going to be, if they find themselves at 7-5, I would say they've had a really good year. The Apple Cup's going to be an important game as always. They'll give some people some fits with the offensive system, but I just don't think the talent is there that they had last year. Certainly Luke Falk is a huge hole to fill at the quarterback position. So 7-5, I think, would be a great win-loss total. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least, in the Palouse. If Tracy Clays can do something to make some noise defensively, maybe that record will maybe improve. Maybe they'll shock some people. If the quarterback situation gets figured out, they have a lot of talent to throw to. So a lot of question marks, and that's kind of why we're not, we're saying it's going to be rough and tough and challenging. But if they get some of these question marks answered with the right guys, with the right pieces, they could kind of keep that momentum going. So the program overall is in really good shape. So I figure they find some answers.
All right. Well, Josh, you want to give us your worst to first there in the North?
Always. So down at the bottom, I unfortunately have the Beavers yet again. There's way too many concerns, especially in the trenches. We need to see Oregon State being too competitive. I think winning 2 of their non-conference games and somehow finding 3 league wins would be a monumental event. Washington State, 5th. Coach talked about new quarterback, a lot of changes on that defense. Those worry me. 4th place, I got Cal with every offensive starter back and 7 returning on defense. There's a lot to like there. Probably not enough talent to win the division, but with all that experience, I would be stunned if the Bears don't get to a bowl this year. 3rd place, Oregon. Justin Hebert, as I like to call him, he's a legit star quarterback.
Is he related to Bobby Hebert?
I hope so. And my man Jim Leavitt running that defense have the Ducks in prime.
I think Jim Leavitt might be the official defensive coordinator of Illegal Motion if Coach is our offensive coordinator.
Fair enough.
Are we okay as a group to officially declare that?
I mean, I'm always going to be a homer for someone that spent any time on Hayden Fry's staff.
Coach, how do you feel about that? Having
Jim Leavitt?
Yeah,
he can come by and yell at me any day.
All right, sounds good.
But yeah, 1 through 3, they all are good contenders. But I've got Oregon finishing 3rd. I went back and forth on Stanford and Washington. So much to love about both teams. I ended up going with Washington 2nd.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, almost all the pieces are there. And if Browning can return to his 2016 form, and if the Huskies can survive those nasty trips to Eugene and Salt Lake City, there's a lot to love about this team. But they got that tough schedule. Browning in the passing game. If it's like last year, I don't know. If it's like 2016, you betcha. So that's why I went with Stanford. I trust David Shaw so much. I love how this team is willing to adjust. They even ran the 2-4-5 last year when the defensive line struggled. Plus, I think they have a running back that's kind of good, you guys.
Yeah, I also accidentally called him Reggie earlier. It's Bryce Love. Reggie Love is a former Wisconsin wide receiver, I think, who never really made much of an impact. So I'm going to apologize for that.
Well, I mean, it could have been worse. He could have called him Fran Tarkenton.
Well, you never actually said it, so you don't have anything to apologize for.
Coach, how do you see the division shaking out worst to first?
This is going to be a fun division, I must say. Outside of Oregon State being dead last, they could fall any other way. I think Wazoo and Cal are interchangeable. I think they're both a lot of question marks, but both have some relatively unknown talent. And if they get some of these question marks that they have figured out, they can make some noise. Although I think the top of this division is too talented for them to really make any real contention. But they're going to be dangerous, and they're going to be a tough out for Washington, Stanford, and Oregon. So as it stands right now, I think the Fighting Cougars of the Palouse have more question marks than Cal, so they're in fifth place there, and then that would put Cal in fourth. Third, I think Oregon fits right in. I think they're a year away. I think they have a lot of talent. Justin Herbert coming back, if he stays healthy, that could certainly change. They're not third by a huge margin. I just think they're barely third because I think Bryce Love factors in for Stanford and Jake Browning factors in for Washington. This one was a tough one. I went back and forth in my mind, Stanford, Washington, Washington, Stanford, just trying to figure out who I think would win this division. I have down on my paper Stanford finishing second, but Washington finishing first. But the more I think about the weapons that they have and the experience they have coming back at quarterback and the fact that they have Bryce Love, I'm actually going to call an audible here, and I'm going to check to Stanford winning the Pac-12 North on the fact that Bryce Love is going to have another 2,000-yard season, thanks in part to KJ Costello being an absolute weapon at the quarterback spot and all the experience they have coming back on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I love Stanford's offensive line, but I also, we'll get there in a second. Obviously, I've got Oregon State in dead last. In the words of the immortal Fran Fraschilla, they're 2 years away from being 2 years away. It is a massive rebuild in Corvallis, and it's going to be a little while before we see a truly competitive team there. I've got Wazoo in fifth. I am usually very, very high on Mike Leach, but I don't like the feeling around this program right now. And I fear that if things go south early on in the season for them, they are going to crumble and finish, well below 500. I've actually, unlike you guys, I have Oregon finishing fourth and not third. Obviously I like Mario Cristobal a lot, but Justin Herbert has to prove to me that he can actually stay on the field for a full season before I fully buy in. I told you guys in my preview that I'm bullish on Cal. I like them to finish third here in the North. I think they're going to have one of the better all-around teams. While they don't have the high-end talent that a Washington or a Stanford or a USC does, I think that they are better than the sum of their parts. So I really like Cal this year. Unlike you guys, I'm actually taking Stanford to be the runner-up just because I still think that teams that can just stack the box, and I'm not 100% sold on KJ Costello as of yet. Washington brings back Jake Browning, and watch out for Myles Gaskin this year, man. He's a dark horse Heisman candidate. I think he's going to have a massive, massive year. So, and I really like their offensive line led by Trey Adams, who is just an absolute mauler at left tackle. Washington, Chris Peterson always has a very solid defense. That should be no different this year. I'm expecting big things for the Huskies. We will reveal on our preview show later this week who our Final Four teams are for the playoff. But Washington, for me, is definitely going to be up there. But let's head now then to the Pac-12 South. And in order to do that, we need to start first in the great state of Arizona. And Josh, you have both of the Arizona teams here.
I do. I know. Yeah.
So I know you were out at both of those schools a couple of years ago now, and I know that you enjoyed your time both in
Tucson and Tempe.
Tucson and Tempe. Yeah, I don't know why I was blanking on those names for half a second, but why don't we start out in Tucson, where they have a new coach and a sort of a new feeling around this program.
They do, and
before you get started, I love the hire of Kevin Sumlin with the
absolutely
with the Wildcats. So I love that.
Were it not for Chip Kelly being hired at UCLA, that I would, even with Chip Kelly being hired at UCLA, that might be the best hire in the country this year.
Yeah, love that hire.
Yeah.
Right, go ahead.
I love the hire too, and Kevin Sumlin, he inherits an offense ready to win soon, like now, like this very year. The offense led the Pac-12 in total offense and scoring, and they return a ton of key pieces. Khalil Tate is their stud quarterback. He's amazing running the ball, but I think he can replicate some of the playmaking ability in the passing game that someone enjoyed with, dare I say it, Johnny Manziel. Tate's fellow backfield mates are
Johnny Football.
Yeah. Tate's backfield mates are also a strong group of guys, including a slash and dash runner, J.J. Taylor, and then also he's kind of being pushed by Nathan Tilford and Gary Brightwell, so very, very deep backfield for Arizona. The offensive line is a strong one of the better ones in the South with tackle late Frykes experience. Strong. They got a really strong center, Nathan Elbridge, and a versatile player in Cody Creason. Lot more even on that line. Arizona didn't pass it particularly well a season ago, but I think that was more because of system than talent. Rich Rod wanted Tate to run way more than pass. Someone will probably flip that script. Defensively, the Wildcats finished 10th in the league, but this is going to improve because of experience alone. 9 starters are back, including a really nice secondary that featured several hard hitters. I'm excited for the development at linebacker, as all 3 starters a year ago were freshmen. The typical, quote, speed instead of size, unquote, that Rich Rod liked for his defensive line is being overhauled. So while the line won't be a strength, I'm not sure it's going to be as big of a liability as it was with the previous coaching scheme. Lastly, Zona gets to enjoy a schedule filled with opportunity. They get Oregon State, Washington State, and Cal in crossover games. They host 2 of their 3 toughest tests. That's USC and Oregon. And outside of a trip to Salt Lake City on 6 days rest after that Cal game, the schedule unfolds very, very nicely.
Well, Josh, you get to stay in the great state of Arizona now to talk about going from one of the best hires in Kevin Sumlin to, I think what we agree is probably the worst hire for any school, not just Power 5, but in all of major college football.
Agreed. And so we all know the quote by Herm Edwards, "You play to win the game." But
that's true. You do play to win the game.
But you don't play to play.
Yeah. But in my research, I found some other Herm Edwards gems that were just too good not to share with you guys. So on describing what defensive lines do from earlier this summer, Herm said, quote, "You've got to storm the castle and hit the guy," unquote. I appreciate that. That was motivational.
I didn't realize that there were moats involved in rushing the passer.
Exactly. I found this one. I particularly like this one. When he was asked about switching quarterbacks in Kansas City, he said, quote, "I thought about it, but he put some points on the board. He did some bad things, but he did some good things too. He got the team in position to score some touchdowns." That quarterback in question, you guys, was Tyler Thigpen, who on that particular day went 14-36 for 128 yards. And in that game, the Chiefs were down 24-0 at one point. And
yeah, that gosh, Herm. When was Josh? When was the last time that Herm coached in college?
1989.
Yeah,
Just play it.
I have one more quote, and this is actually my favorite quote by far. In fact, this might be one of the favorite quotes I've seen for anything that I've ever done for this show. So when the Jets beat the Packers, and there was a domino effect that got a bunch of teams in the NFL playoffs, he had this gem. Quote, "I heard from the Cleveland Browns. I got a letter and a bottle of Dom Perignon. I don't even drink. Obviously, we win and they get in. I heard from all my friends in Philadelphia. I also heard from my friends in Tampa. They sent me flowers and fruit baskets. With our win, we helped a lot of people. A lot of people stay in the sun. Phillies head home. It's all good for them," unquote.
What?
Thank you. Yes, that was what I was wondering as well.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know what's unclear about that, you guys. He got a bottle of wine from Cleveland and some fruit baskets. So those three quotes highlight something that I feel, which is hiring Herm Edwards is a joke. His former agent is now the Arizona State athletic director and hired him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they fired Todd Graham, who, albeit flawed, was 14 games over 500 and 8 games over 500 in the Pac-12. He had a pair of 10-win seasons and took them to 5 bowls in 6 seasons. So if you need to fire him, fine. But for the love of God, hire Kevin Sumlin. Hire Les Miles. Hire even Bob freaking Stoops. Pull him out of retirement. Hire a big-name assistant. Hire a rising star from the group of 5. But Herm Edwards, you got to be kidding me. This is like Mike Riley at Nebraska all over again, but even worse.
It's 30 times worse than Mike Riley at Nebraska. At least Mike Riley's been coaching in college for the last 20 years.
Agreed.
Like, he has some success at Oregon State. Like, Herm Edwards has zero college coaching experience. Hasn't even been coaching anyone for 10 years.
Exactly.
Like, besides what, like the Army All-American game?
Pretty much.
You go in and give a bunch of rah-rah speeches.
Yep.
Like, Herm Edwards, great quote machine.
Is he?
Yes, I'm clearly judging by what you just read to us.
Yeah.
He is clearly a very good quote machine.
Hello.
So as for the people actually on the roster, so Manny Wilkins, he's a good quarterback. Neil Henry is a great wide receiver, and the offensive line has 4 starters back. Defense is changing to a 3-3-5, but doesn't return a lot of eye-popping talent. And lastly, and what I found to be an absolutely sick, faux patriotic garbage move, Arizona State is naming their roving secondary position after Pat Tillman. And so, dude, Herm, read a book. Tillman was an atheist. Tillman was critical of the war in Iraq. Tillman turned down a mega million offer to stay with the Cardinals. I would have hated to have his name singled out like that. Tillman would not have enjoyed your faith-based rambling. Matt Tillman is a complex figure. He's not something for you to use to suck up to the Arizona Make America Great Again freaks, mouth-breathing all over your no-water state. I hope this team goes 0-12.
Amen.
How do you really feel?
Yeah, Josh, tell us how you really feel.
I despise them.
You really should hold back.
Yeah.
Well, the next 3 schools alphabetically have gone to me.
Yeah.
Have gone to me, so I'm going to blow through these 3. We'll start in Boulder, Colorado, where after a hiccup last year following the Buffs' 2016 Pac-12 South title, Mike McIntyre brings back a team that is going to have a lot of fresh faces for his 6th year at Folsom Field. Quarterback Steven Montez is back, but he has an entirely new supporting cast around him. I'd expect Virginia Tech transfer Trayvon McMillan to step into the shoes that Philip Lindsay vacated after being there for about 2.5 decades. The wide receiver unit, though, is anyone's guess at this point. They lost 4 of their top 5 pass catchers from last season. The only guy they bring back from that group is Mike McIntyre's son. The new offensive coordinator, Darren Chiaverini and Clayton Adams, those guys are co-offensive coordinators. They also lose 3 of their starting linemen from last season. So it is going to be a lot of new faces out there in Colorado, and so we don't really know what to expect except for relying heavily on Steven Montez, both in terms of throwing the ball and running the ball. Where the Buffs got killed last year was their noticeable drop-off in D in the wake of Jim Leavitt, our own defensive coordinator, when he departed for Oregon. This year's defense is going to be solid up the middle while they return both middle linebackers and both safeties. Elsewhere, though, not a ton to really write home about, especially along the line. CU has been a cornerback factory of late. They have a bunch of guys in the NFL now, but no one on this year's roster really returns with any sort of fanfare. They opened the season in Fort Collins against in-state rival Colorado State, then hit the road for Lincoln in week 2, followed by a bit of a respite in week 3 against the UNH Wildcats. Conference games, though, at USC, Washington, and Arizona are pretty much guaranteed losses, as is their game against Utah at home. Honestly, I think they're going to slide even further than they were last year. I think they're going to be down to about 4-8. So now we're going to head, though, to USC. Obviously, you guys know who listen to the show that I am not a fan of the University of Spoiled Children, but I am very acutely interested in the men of Troy this season because they have to replace Sam Darnold and Ronald Jones as their starting quarterback and tailback. It's Clay Helton's 3rd year in South Central, and it's going to be his make-or-break year. That was the case with the last 2 Trojan coaches. In their 3rd year was the beginning of the end for both Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin. The big question this year, coming into it at least, was who's going to be starting at quarterback. But they released a depth chart this week, and it's going to be true freshman JT Daniels, who reclassified last year. And if he wanted to, actually could still be in high school. Instead, he will be starting for USC in week 1. There's a lot of good options, though, for him to hand the ball off to at tailback between senior Cedric Ware, sophomores Stephen Carr, and Vave Malepai, all of whom fit in with the prototypical USC tailback mode. Like, all 3 of them are the exact same size. They're all about 6'3", 220. Or sorry, not 6'3", 6'0", 220. Reggie Bush size, can do a little bit of everything out of the backfield. The line returns 2 all-conference players on their left side and should be overall a better unit than last year's, which had to replace almost all of their starters. There's a bunch of young receivers. Of course, it's USC. 1 or 2 of them are going to pop really early on in the season. We're not really sure who is going to be yet at this point, but I'm intrigued about true freshman Amon-Ra St. Brown, brother of Equanimous St. Brown, who's now playing for the Packers, formerly of Notre Dame.
Packers.
Yeah. So their defense, though, they're led by linebackers Porter Gustin and Cameron Smith, but Porter Gustin just has to stay healthy. Here's a guy who was a huge recruit coming out of Utah in high school. 4-star, 5-star kind of kid, just an absolute physical freak, but has not been able to stay on the field during his time at USC so far. Cameron Smith, though, the inside backer for the Trojans, is one of the best in the nation. He seems to be involved in every single tackle in play. The D line this year, very young, but they always have some sort of talent, including 5-star true freshman Jay Tufele. The secondary, it's USC. The secondary is always going to be good. This year, the guy I'm really interested in their secondary is their safety Marvell Tell, which I think is a fabulous name. But, the men of Troy, they're going to get a huge test in week 2 when they head up to the farm to take on Stanford. And they follow that up with a roadie in Austin where the Longhorns will be waiting for them.
I love roadies.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Games at Arizona and Utah are both going to be tough, and I would not be shocked if they dropped at least one, if not both of those. They, of course, end the year with their 2 biggest rivals, UCLA and Notre Dame. But fortunately for them, the Irish are playing at the Coliseum, and UCLA is probably going to be we'll talk about UCLA here in a second, but I would expect them to win the game at the Rose Bowl. I think USC is going to be the best 8-4 team in the country this year, but the only reason I don't have them going higher is because they have a very, very tough schedule. But next, though, we're going to head off just across town to Westwood, one of my alma maters, and there is new life on campus as Chip Kelly takes over. But he has quite the uphill climb ahead of him as he gets the Bruins back on top of Pac-12 South. Quarterback competition has definitely been the talk of the town so far, but no starter has been named as of yet. It's a 3-man race between Devin Modster, who spent last year as Chosen Rosen's backup, former Michigan Wolverines starter Wilton Spate, and true freshman Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who definitely falls in line, checks the most boxes as a prototypical Chip Kelly quarterback. Unfortunately, though, whoever is going to be taking snaps for this team is going to be protected, or I should say not very well protected, by a very young line. They lose 3 starters from last season, including top 15 NFL draft pick Colton Miller. They've even had to move former 5-star defensive tackle recruit Boss Tagaloa over to the offensive line just to have enough warm bodies to protect the quarterback. However, whoever's starting behind center, they do get back some solid playmakers in receiver Theo Howard, tight end Caleb Wilson, who is one of the best in the country, if he can stay healthy, and a very solid running back tandem of Soso Jamabo and Bolu Olurunfumi. Good Lord, that's a lot of vowels between those 2 names. Chip
You
Kelly,
win in Scrabble.
Yeah, definitely. Chip Kelly, he brought along his old friend Jerry Azzinaro to run the defense for the Bruins. Azzinaro has a Herculean task in front of him, though. UCLA last year suffered a rash of defensive injuries that was unlike anything that I can quite frankly remember. Because of that, they had a lot of young guys who earned some playing time, so the staff is clearly hoping that the experience pays off, but they are definitely not not the deepest team there on the defense. They have a solid pass rushing duo in Chigozie Noruk and Marcus Moore. But I'm also actually most curious, though, about Jalen Phillips, who's moved from defensive end to outside linebacker and is, could be an outstanding pass rusher. I'm also really curious to see how former 5-star linebacker Meek Juarez looks this year. He's had a pretty up and down career so far on campus, stepped away from the game for a little bit, has been dealing with issues, off the field as well. People in Westwood are hoping that he can get back on the field and back on track to the promise that he showed as a prep recruit. The Bruins face a very tough road test, though, in week 2 when they have to head to Norman to take on the Sooners. From there, they come back home to play a Fresno State team that is going to be very frisky. Conference road games at Colorado, Cal, Oregon, and Arizona State, though, are all winnable, but none of those are guarantees, except for probably Arizona State. They finish up with USC and Stanford. That's 2 losses right there. I can see them going 6-6, maybe 7-5. They reach a bowl game, though, in Chip Kelly's first year. I think that is a successful season for the Bruins. But now, though, let's head over to the final team here in the Pac-12, and that is the Utah Utes, Coach.
Oh, the good old Utes. I tell you what, here's a name that's just as rock solid as ever, Kyle Whittingham. Since joining the conference, they've yet to break through with the Pac-12 South title. Again, this might be their year. They're contenders. I really, in looking at this team, probably have them underranked within this division. That's going to change here soon when I rewrite these. This has probably been the one conference that I've probably rewritten my worst to first more than twice. Just trying to figure out who's going to do what, because albeit it might not be the most overly talented conference in the country, but it is probably one of the most competitive conferences because each team brings something to the table that other teams don't, and that's what makes it exciting. So for Utah, they have a lot of experience on offense. They have some key impact players that could make the lack of experience at other spots kind of go away. They have a tough schedule, and they have a tough schedule. But again, what favors them is they're the only team that hasn't had a lot of turnover within their division. And I say a lot of turnover. A lot of these teams, new coaching staffs. You had UCLA, Arizona State. Have new staffs, and again, changes within assistant coaches on other staffs and changes in personnel and a lot of people leaving and going here and there and everywhere within the division. But Utah and USC are probably the 2 teams that have changed the least within this division. So that's got to account for something. So, at the quarterback position, Tyler Huntley, again, he's kind of a surprise because starter Troy Williams, last year was the favorite to kind of win that job. But Tyler Huntley, they just kind of chose him over the incumbent, and he didn't make them regret it. He missed 3 conference games due to injury, but he played well enough to hold off Williams and highly touted freshman Jack Tuttle and Jason Shelley is a redshirt freshman. So Tyler Huntley comes back for the UTEZ. Running back Zach Moss, he was kind of the guy that they turned to when things got rough. He was in games against Colorado and West Virginia. West Virginia was their bowl opponent in the Heart of Dallas Bowl. He rushed for almost 200 yards against Colorado, a game that the UTEZ needed, I guess, to be in bowl contention. And then the 150 spot he put on West Virginia in the bowl game kind of made things easier for the Utes. They will miss Darren Carrington. He's probably in school history one of the best receivers, single-season receivers. He was a grad transfer, so that's going to hurt. But they have Britton Covey. He's coming back from his 2-year church mission because in Utah they do that. Covey caught 43 passes for 519 yards as a freshman all the way back in 2015. So he should fit perfectly into the scheme that Troy Taylor brings. Again, this is probably going to be more of a run-heavy scheme with Zach Moss coming back. But, don't be surprised if some of these receivers get into the mix as well. They have 4 new starters on the offensive line. That was the case a year ago. They averaged 413.4 yards per game then, which was down slightly from the production a year ago. So they returned all of those guys. So that's extremely, extremely promising. They scored 30-plus points in wins over UCLA and Colorado, and even in a loss to Washington in a very, very competitive game. So they can produce on that side of the ball, and they've shown that they can. So, again, this will be one of the biggest strengths, not only at Utah, but within the entire division. So having so much firepower and such a great experienced offensive line that didn't struggle a year ago is not only huge, but it is vital to the success of the UTEZ if they're going to make a run at their first Pac-12 South title and maybe even their first Pac-12 title overall. So defensively, always they're known for their defensive linemen. They, year in and year out, they're one of the Pac-12's top teams at this position. Bradley Anai is the star of this group. He's a defensive end who led the team with 7 sacks a year ago. Also, 2 linebackers. They're going to have to look for those. But Chase Hansen is a heck of an athlete, and Cody Barton has been a part-time starter for 2 seasons, so it's not like he's inexperienced. He was actually, fun fact, he was signed as a quarterback. And Hansen has also played a lot of safety. So Marquise Blair at strong safety when he was injured, missed the last month of the season, but he's a big-time ball player when he is healthy and not in the training room. He tied for 4th on the team in tackles, and he only played in 9 games, which I don't know what that tells you either. A lot of different people were making tackles, or I don't know. Take that stat however you want to. Corian Ballard, also at free safety, intercepted 2 passes. Morgan Scaley, the defensive coordinator, entering his 11th season. So talk about stability on that side of the ball as far as from the top down. They have a lot of depth at cornerback. Julian Blackman had 4 interceptions a year ago. He's kind of the leader of that group. So Coach Scaley is looking forward to what he can do with his secondary and what obviously he can do on his defensive line. The linebacking core, again, is going to be an interesting setup. But I'm really excited about this Utah team. For once, Kyle Whittingham has a legit contender. They have, Huntley leading the charge at quarterback with Moss at the tailback position, and all of the new coaches and situations in the Pac-12 South. If there was ever a year they were going to get this division, this has got to be the year. So, the schedule is difficult. They miss Oregon State and Cal in the rotation, but again, they can. They're probably, I think, as of right now. Now this could change dramatically, but as of right now, I think they're probably in the best position to give USC a run for that title.
All right.
Well, I got something interesting to ask you guys. So, Kyle Whittingham, amazing coach for Utah. He is entering his 8th year for Utah as their Pac-12 coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's been there longer in the Pac-12 now, in the Mountain West. He was there from 2005 to 2010 at Utah for the Mountain West, and now 11 to 18. But that brings me to my question. David Shaw has also been there since 2011. Who is the dean of coaches then for the Pac-12? Split duty, or do they consider Whittingham having?
I'm giving the I guess I'm giving the tiebreaker to Whittingham just because he's been at the school longer, even though their school has not been in the Pac-12 nearly as long.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think it's time to go worst to first, Josh.
Hey, I love going worst to first. So I've got.
I'm a Brave fan, so I love going worst to first.
You and me both, Coach.
I got Sparky dead last. I feel bad for their offensive stars having to play for such a joke of a coach. 5th place, the Buffaloes. Steven Montez, he's a nice quarterback, and I think the defense, which struggled a year ago, will have just enough of an improvement to get the Buffs back to maybe a bowl. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in a bowl game. UCLA, I've got it 4th. Chip doesn't have the offensive line or the quarterback to make a huge splash his first year in Westwood/Pasadena, but you just can't count him out. He's too good of a collegiate coach. 3rd place is Utah. They are a legit contender. These, just like the North, 1, 2, and 3, they're just in a league of their own. So Utah, legit contender talent-wise, but man, they have a tough schedule. They're at Stanford, then 6 days later, Arizona, then USC. That's all in October. They also have a crossover with Oregon in November. That is tough sledding. If they make it to the title game, they will have certainly earned it. 2nd place, USC. They are probably the most talented of the 3 contenders in the South, but by far the toughest schedule, even tougher than Utah's. They have roadies to Stanford, Arizona, and Utah, and that's the Pac-12 South, except my surprise champion. I'm going with Arizona, you guys. They have huge offensive upside, even after being the best offensive season ago statistically. I think they're going to improve even on being the best. That's how much I respect Kevin Sumlin. The defense is going to be improved. They also have the most favorable schedule of the 3 contenders in the South. Arizona, upset bid. Let's go.
Yeah. Bear down, baby. Bear down.
Bear down.
Bear down.
All right.
How are you feeling worst to first?
All right. I want you to answer. I want you to ask me this question first before I get into my worst to first. So ask me this: what is more exciting than watching Arizona State this fall?
Coach,
what's more exciting than watching Arizona State?
Coach, I've got a question for you. This is very important.
Very important.
What on earth could possibly be more exciting than watching the Sun Devils play ball this fall?
Well, make sure you tweet at us at illegalmotion_pod, first of all. But
at illegal_motion.
There you go. I knew that. It's great that I got that. See, brain farts all around, man. It stinks in here.
Somehow you're still making a lot more sense than Herm Edwards.
Well, I play to win the game, obviously. So what could be more exciting? Well, this article of 20 things that really happened on Pimp My Ride. So those 20 things.
Shout out to Exhibit,
the X-Man. Love it. So do you think that reveals my dead last?
Potentially.
Yeah, it does. All right. ASU is dead last, followed by Colorado. I think Colorado, although I like watching them play, I just think they're going to be kind of victim to what looks to be another talented division and a competitive division. I think next is going to be the Wizards of Westwood. Chip Kelly, phenomenal coach, but I think he's got too many hills to climb. I think he'll have a formidable team, a bowl team, but I just don't think he's in line just yet to win the division. Followed by a very razor-thin top three. I think USC holds on at this point to the top spot, but the next two slots are very, very, very tight and could very easily challenge USC for that top spot. I really like the talent Utah has coming back, and I really like what they have. So they're going to be runner-up just by the slimmest of margins in a very competitive battle with USC. And then I think as talented as Arizona is, lots of transition with the new coaching staff. So I think that's going to play a factor at some point in the season. You're going to kind of have those new coach blues that everyone seems to encounter. Even the national championship participant Georgia Bulldogs last year, the year before in Kirby's first year, had a lot of those moments where you were kind of thinking, why in the hell did we hire Kirby Smart? There's going to be points in the season where Arizona fans think that about Sumlin. That's nothing.
Was it Sumlin's best year, his first year with A&M?
Yes.
It was, but he's still going to have those moments in a new conference. I don't know. I think he's going to have those moments. People are going to be like, why? That's normal. That's normal. That's just kind of life as a college coach. So that's how my division cracks out. USC is going to obviously win this division again this year.
All right. So Josh has Arizona, Coach has USC, and I've got we'll get there in a second. Arizona State is so far below the rest of this division, it's not even funny.
Watch them win this division.
If they win the division, we need to do something terribly stupid in order to eat crow on this one. Like maybe eat an actual crow.
They're not. They're not.
How do you prepare crow, by the way?
Well, I would stew it, clearly.
Okay, if Arizona State wins the Pac-12 South, I will go to Kansas and run 5 miles on their track.
5 miles on the track? I would pay to see that. I think the three of us would need a relay race in order to accomplish 5 miles.
Just the three of us?
Well, maybe we can bring in our significant others to spell us for a little while because we would need that.
Actually, just your significant other. She could probably run laps around all of us.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I'll make it about 200 yards, and I'm like, through this.
Yet somehow, I'm doing another half marathon in Memphis in December. So,
you're insane, man.
I know. Anyhow, yeah, Arizona State, awful. 5th place, Colorado. Like I said in my preview for the team, I think it's just there's they graduated so many guys on offense, and without Jim Leavitt, man, this defense just fell apart, and I don't feel like it's really going in the right direction right now.
Folsom Field could be more like Folsom Prison for them.
Oof.
The best thing occurring at Folsom Field this year is probably someone playing the Dave Matthews Live at Folsom Field album. So 4th place. All
right. So my co-hosts, one makes a Johnny Cash joke and the other makes a Dave Matthews joke. How am I the most relevant of the three of us?
No pressure, Josh.
Because you're the youngest. Because Josh,
you are the youngest.
You're the baby of the group.
I am the elder statesman, so I had to make the elder statesman reference.
Mm-hmm. And I,
respect your elders.
Yeah, being the middle child, I had to go, obviously, with Dave Matthews, the middle child of popular music.
Okay, that was a stretch.
Fourth place.
That sounded like a Herm Edwards quote.
Oh, good Lord. Please don't put me in the same sentence with him.
I'll start making more sense.
Fourth place, I'm taking UCLA. Obviously, I think Chip Kelly's going to do wonderful things there in Westwood. They just don't have the right talent for his system at the moment. Third place, I have, drumroll please, USC.
Ooh.
That schedule is freaking brutal, man. And I like I said in my preview, I think they're going to be the best 8-4 team in the country. Mm-hmm. However, I think that Arizona is going to finish 10-2, one game behind 11-1 Utah. That's right, boys. The Utah Utes are going to the Pac-12 title game. For me, against Washington, you guys think Stanford's coming out of the North. So let's head now. Who do you think is going to be the Pac-12 champ, Josh?
Well, between Stanford and Arizona, I am going to go with Stanford because as much as Arizona's defensive line culture is changing, that is a big ask to go against that Stanford O-line and Bryce Love.
Coach, how about you? Have you got Stanford or SC?
I've got Stanford. I think SC has enough firepower, but they're going to be so exhausted from that schedule and doing whatever they had to do to win that division. So I think Bryce Love is going to take full advantage of that. He's going to go ham.
All right. Well, I've got Washington and Utah in my title game. I love Washington this year. But obviously, their big test is going to be week 1 when they play Auburn, which is that's an absolutely phenomenal game for opening weekend. I am so pumped about that game, but I think that Washington is going to be, in the conversation for the playoff all year. I've got them winning the Pac-12 title. Josh, who is your Pac-12 offensive player of the year?
I'm going to turn around and hand it right back to Bryce Love.
Okay. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm just turning and handing the trophy off to Bryce Love.
Well, I guess I'm the odd man out here. I am not handing the ball off. I'm faking it to Bryce Love and having a QB keeper with Khalil Tate over at Arizona.
Nice.
Yeah, I love Khalil Tate here. Defensive player of the year, Josh.
I think for them to survive that schedule and win 8, 9, 10 games, it's going to be a lot of yeoman's work by Mr. Cameron Smith, that big, nasty linebacker the Trojans have.
Coach?
I agree wholeheartedly. Cameron Smith has got to be the guy. He's the leader of that defense. He's the guy that makes it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a clean sweep for Cameron Smith. Even though I only got USC finishing 3rd in the South, I think that Smith and Gustin are a linebacker combo that is amongst the best in the entire nation when healthy. Coach of the year, Josh.
Obviously, if I have them winning the Pac-12 South, some hardware is going to have to go somewhere to Arizona, and that's where Kevin Sumlin gets his.
All right. Coach?
I think Kyle Whittingham has got to do it, especially if your prediction rings true, Matt. So that's going to be my prediction. He's either going to win Coach of the Year as the Pac-12 South runner-up for the amazing coaching job he did, or they're going to win the division, and he's going to win Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I also have Whittingham. If Utah wins the South this year, I don't see how you can't give it to him. Honorable mention, obviously, though, Justin Wilcox. If Cal finishes 8-4, like I predict they will, I think he will get some votes as well. Josh, you don't care about Rookie of the Year.
Never.
Coach, have you got a Rookie or Freshman of the Year here?
No.
I think the obvious choice is JT Daniels, just because he's going to be the starter at USC at quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see how he adapts to the college game. Josh, first coach fired.
I don't believe the Pac-12 is going to have a coach fired this season.
All right, Coach.
Yeah, I agree. There's too many new coaches in this conference. Nobody's getting fired. But I do think there might be a surprise departure by choice. But I don't think anybody's going to get fired.
Did you want to elaborate?
Yeah, do you want to elaborate on that? Who do you think is going somewhere?
Ooh, I think
I'm curious about this now, Coach, because I don't know anyone who would actually leave the job that they're at right now.
Mario Cristobal for Florida State.
Yeah,
that would be hilarious.
I think it wouldn't totally shock me to see Justin Wilcox back in the Big Ten.
Ooh, I was about to say it wouldn't totally surprise me to see Justin Wilcox back at LSU in a year or two.
That either
LSU, when was he at LSU?
Wasn't he the defensive coordinator a couple years ago with them?
I don't think so.
That was Chief. That was Big Chief, John Chavis.
Wilcox before he went to Cal was at Wisconsin. Before that, he was at USC, Washington, and Boise State.
Was he at Florida ever?
Yeah,
I don't believe so.
No. Who is? There's a LSU defensive coordinator that has a name very similar to Justin Wilcox.
Dave Aranda?
No. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of Dave Aranda because both were at Wisconsin.
Yeah, they were both. Wilcox followed Aranda at Wisconsin.
Yeah, my Wisconsin streams are crossing, and it's rapidly.
Your Wisconsin 3-4 coordinators are overlapping.
It's rapidly.
When Minnesota realizes that the PJ Fleck experiment is not very good, they might look to Justin Wilcox.
It's rapidly turning.
I see Wilcox as a West Coast guy. I think Minnesota would be a lateral move at best, going from Cal to Minnesota, even if the Big Ten West is an easier division than
even if they're willing to pay. Sometimes lateral move is.
I know, but still, Wilcox. I think of him as like a West Coast guy. I think he's in just the right situation right now.
He's going to be the one that has the most temptation. He'll get some. He'll get offers if they do go 8-4, like I'm predicting that they go. Yeah. He's going to have some big time offers. Yeah, absolutely.
As much as I hate to say this, I think this is Mike Leach's last season on the Blues.
Why?
I think he's wearing his welcome thin, man. I think that they're gonna fall back significantly this year, and I just it feels like from what I've read in the off season, he's starting to be a little to be grading on some people in and around the program.
Intriguing stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, there's going to be a lot more intriguing stuff coming up in the Mountain West here. But first, we're going to take a short break before we come back with the Mountain West Mountain. All right, and we are back, and it's time for our final conference, the Mountain West, and we saved one of the best for last. Mountain West always has some really intriguing teams. Obviously, Boise State's one of them, but we're going to start in the Mountain Division alphabetically, as we have done. We're going to Air Force first, so out to Colorado Springs you go, Coach.
All right. Air Force is typically one of my favorite teams to talk about, but they're going to have some answers to try to find. They're going to have some questions to answer. This is really the thing to say, especially at the quarterback position. They were all excited about Arion Worthman. He was ready to become one of the Mountain West's top offensive threats. He was going to be a big-time playmaker. As a sophomore, he led them to 6 wins in a row, but in his second season as a starter, struggled. Less than 50% of his passes completed. His yards per carry dropped from 5.2 to 3.8. And they pretty much exposed all of his faults and weaknesses that year, last year, when Army completely dismantled him and grounded the Air Force attack. So, again, he's going to kind of be the key to this, as they are a spread option type attack. If he stays healthy, and really just kind of gains more accuracy, he will be okay. Again, he's going to have to average more than 14 carries. He's going to have to just be better, to put it, But they're going to have, a huge hole to fill at the running back position, the tailback position. Tim McVay leaves. McVay was, again, not properly utilized, in my opinion. Joey Saucer emerged in the offseason as a top candidate there, so that's a name to look for. Maybe they will utilize him better than they did McVay. They have tackles Griffin Landrum and Wolfgang Reebok coming back to bolster an undersized but offensive line that is actually athletic. So they had Air Force 4th place nationally in rushing yards a year ago. So again, a group that doesn't throw it a ton. Ronald Cleveland leads it, is the leader of the wide receivers. He was open a lot, but Worthman didn't really find him. And even if he did find him, he couldn't deliver him an accurate ball. So maybe that changes too. That'll be the key for that offense. Defensively, they allowed 6 yards per carry, worst in the nation. An adjective that described their defensive front: flimsy. I don't know about you.
That's not a word I want associated with any part of my football team, but especially my defensive line.
Well, to make up for that, they had continued softness in the middle, and it doesn't get any better. They face one of the most potent rushing attacks in all of FBS, definitely the group of five, maybe even in the upper echelons of even Power 5, FAU, San Diego State, and New Mexico Army and Navy. So, again, if your defensive front is being described as flimsy and having continued softness in the middle, you play those teams, it's going to be a long year. Again, Steve Russ left to go to the NFL, most notably the Carolina Panthers. He's a former he's an alum of the Air Force Academy, actually, at linebacker. So he knew kind of how to recruit and build defenses that played well with undersized players. So they're going to have to get that's a lot of knowledge that's exiting to the NFL. So what's going to happen for Air Force? Well, they're going to have to make their flimsy defense sturdy. Worthman is going to have to be full of worth. He's going to have to be worthwhile, I guess. He's going to be more accurate and more of a contributor. And they're just going to have to, there's a lot of holes. There might be too many holes, but they have September 8th trip all the way to Florida Atlantic, of course, the Commander-in-Chief trophy competition with Army being drastically improved. It's going to be a tough go as well. So it just looks more and more like you have a quarterback that is falling on his face in a flimsy defensive front. Doesn't bode well for the Falcons, and I think they're going to kind of have a repeat of last year.
Yeah, I'm not terribly high on the Falcons either this year, but our second team here in the Mountain Division is a team I think that we're all probably pretty high on coming into the year. That is obviously the Boise State Broncos, where Brian Harsin is back for his 5th year in charge. And this is the 4th of those 5 years that he has had Brett Rippon behind center. Unfortunately for Rippon, though, he loses his number one wide receiver in Cedric Wilson to the NFL. But they've got a couple of younger receivers in A.J. Richardson and Sean Modster who should be able to step up and take his place. The line, though, will need to show some improvement from last season and hope for some injury luck. They only had one player last year who started every game for them at the on the line, and that was left tackle Ezra Cleveland, who was only a redshirt freshman last year. Defensively, this team, though, is going to be the class of the Mountain West. Sophomore defensive end Curtis Weaver had 26.5 tackles for loss last year. That is an astounding number, especially when you consider how young he is. And he's back. alongside Jabril Frazier, Duran Miles, and Sonatone Louis, and David Moa. Those are their top 5 linemen. They're all back. They should be absolutely dominant within the conference. Might be the best single position unit in the conference. They also returned 4 of their top 5 defensive backs. So obviously, it's going to be very tough sledding for any team to move the ball against Boise State, especially when you're playing up there in Smurf turf. Sophomore corner Avery Williams, also a phenomenal kick returner. He took 2 of those to the house last year. The rest of special teams units are also very solid. They return all of last season's starters that ranked 29th in special teams efficiency. So, and when it comes to, especially, one possession games, got to be sound in the kicking game. Boise State's definitely going to be sound in the kicking game. They've got a fascinating game, though, to open the season. I love this. Under the radar, this is a game I'm definitely tuning in for week 1. They are playing Troy in a matchup between two of the best teams in the group of 5. They also play at Oklahoma State in week 3. That's their biggest non-conference game against a marquee opponent. They've got tough tests in conference at home, as both San Diego State and Fresno State have to head up to the Smurf turf. So fortunately for them, no real tough games on the road. I'm expecting another division title and probably a conference title, honestly, not to spoil my pick for later. But I'm expecting Boise State to put up at least 10 wins, which is something they seemingly do every year. So from there, though, let's head over to Fort Collins, to one of the favorite teams of this show. That would be the Fighting Bobos of Colorado State. They, though, it's going to be a long season for Fort Collins, guys. I've got some bad news. They've lost so many dudes from that offense from last year. Quarterback Nick Stevens, number 1 wide receiver Michael Gallup, who just put up monster numbers, number 1 running back Dalen Dawkins. They have to replace 4 of their top 5 receivers. Going on top of that, they're going to have a new quarterback. It looks like it's going to be KJ Carter-Samuels, the grad transfer from Washington, in that first game against Hawaii, which they played in week 0, actually this past weekend. And, he does not have a ton of targets to throw the ball to. Fortunately for him, though, he does have tailback Izzy Matthews, who has over 2,000 yards on the ground in his career as a backup for the past 3 seasons. He's a senior this year, really his first time to step up and shine in a leading role.
And Matt, they to interject here, Colorado State had an interim head coach for a large portion of training camp because Mike Bobo had some health issues that he had to get sorted out. And I think he actually coached the game from the press box, if my memory serves me correctly. So he didn't actually step back on the field until like Wednesday of game week. So they've had some adversity in the offseason dealing with some of the or even in the preseason training camp, dealing with some of the medical issues that their head coach was suffering. He had numbness in his feet. And so he had to go get that checked out.
Yeah. And, as much as sometimes we poke a little fun at Mike Bobo, we all really like him as a coach and just as a guy in general. So we are obviously hoping that he gets back to 100% health and can be on the sideline for these games because, we all think he has a very bright future in front of him, probably moving on to the Power 5 maybe in a couple of years.
Yeah, and having been his coworker was a lot of fun. I spent, a total of 4 years scattered over 6 alongside of him at UGA. So very good guy to work with, work for, things like that. So, just hope he has continued health and he solves a lot of those health issues he's been dealing with lately.
Yeah. So back on the field for the Rams, though, last thing I just want to note offensively, their line should be pretty solid. I think I think that will even grow throughout the year. Even though they lost 2 off-conference players in Jake Bennett and Zach Goldich, they have Louisville transfer TJ Roundtree and one of the better JUCO offensive linemen from this past cycle and Keith Williams, both those guys stepping in and starting immediately for them. Defense, though, has not really been the calling card for Colorado State under Bobo. So they brought in a new defensive coordinator this year, John Jancic he's a former Tennessee coordinator many moons ago. But part of this transition means that they are moving from a 3-4 to a 4-3. And obviously, Josh, as you know, when you're making the transition either from 3-4 to 4-3 or vice versa, it is not the easiest move to go, especially when it comes to personnel.
No, I don't know why. Maybe Coach knows this. Coach, if you want to change from the 4-3 to the 3-4, why don't you just suck it up and coach 1 year with the 4-3 and recruit personnel to make the switch the following year?
That's what I would do, but a lot of people are just kind of stuck in their ways and they're comfortable coaching what they're comfortable coaching. I don't know. Me personally, I would transition and then just try to get my people and try to gear up my roster for a full-on switch. I would have some.
You have some sort of hybrid in that first year.
Yeah, I would have some packages, but I would stick ultimately to the scheme that they've recruited for. And then,
and obviously, any good coach is going to try to utilize the talents of the players that he has. And so, if he has to change the scheme around to do that, you do so because that's in the best interest of the team.
And that's where John Jancic is obviously lacking. I don't know that he's very good at adjusting. I think he just kind of knows what he knows. And so, having worked with him for a season as well, I don't know why he keeps getting defensive coordinator jobs. Kind of like Brian Van Gorder. I'm not sure where it's all coming from, but he's got some knowledge. I'm not gonna completely hammer him. Obviously, he's got some knowledge and he's really good at it.
And clearly Bobo is very comfortable with him.
Yeah, and Bobo knows him. Yeah. So who knows? Maybe he's a good fit for Colorado State. I don't know, but I guess if they're going to struggle in other areas, I guess they might as well struggle transitioning their defensive scheme.
Well, I think in the Mountain West, I feel like with the diversity of attacks that you get, you might have to face Air Force 1 week and then Hawaii the next week, and you're getting two completely different things. I feel like the 3-4 is a little bit more adaptable in terms of.
Linebackers are easier to find and recruit.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually funny that you mentioned the linebackers because that is far and away the best unit on this defense. Josh Watson, Max McDonald, Trey Thomas, they're all, very, very solid guys. They've got an adequate but not stellar defensive line rotation, but their DBs are where I am most concerned. They lose 3 starters from last year. Only get one of the safeties back. I'm concerned, and I think Hawaii exposed in that first game that you're going to be able to throw these guys if that line cannot get pressure with only 3 guys. So fortunately or unfortunately for them, they have all 3 of their main specialists back from last year. This was a unit that was actually one of the better ones in the conference. Even though Colorado State lost to Hawaii this past weekend in what we're calling, I guess, week 0, I'm still expecting, the Fighting Bobos to be a formidable conference opponent. Their non-conference schedule is tough. They have got rival Colorado in week 1, followed by games at Arkansas and Florida. Both of those are going to be very difficult. But I could see them beating Arkansas. I don't see them beating Florida. Week 4, they get FCS Illinois State. But Illinois State was one of the better teams in FCS last year, so it was by no means a complete walkover. They have to play at Boise State, so that's probably a loss. But the rest of the schedule, manageable. 6 or 7 wins this season. Bowl berth feels about right to me. All right, I'm hitting the trifecta here in the Mountain Division. Finally, I get to go to New Mexico. Bob Davie is back for his 7th season at the helm of New Mexico, but it is under a black cloud, that is for sure. He was suspended based on conduct investigations this spring, and they've lost a ton of players. They're going to be very reliant on JUCOs this season, and JUCOs are about as hit or miss as you can get. They're also bringing in a new offensive coordinator, Calvin McGee. He's going to want to air it out even a little bit more. The one guy on offense, though, I'm not worried about is their starting quarterback, Tavaka Tuioti. He's going to put up some big numbers. He's a really true dual threat guy. And, I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up 3,500 yards through the air, 800, 900 yards rushing. They're going to I think he's going to be able to score some points. They also get their leading rusher back, Tyrone Owens, but after him, they've got no one with any real experience at running back. The line, they are going to be bringing in 3 JUCOs who are all expected to be contributors from day one. The receiving core, I'm kind of bullish on this receiving core. I really like Delani Hart-Johnson. He's a really big kid, 6'4", 213. Definitely a great red zone matchup. And also Q Drennan. His first name is Q apostrophe, which shout out to him, because if your first name is just one singular letter, you are almost on Prince levels. He's an absolute burner and could be a guy that you see pushing 20 yards per catch this year. However, the defensive side of the ball, Kevin Cosgrove, the defensive coordinator, loses 5 starters from last year, but they've got a fair bit of talent back on that side of the ball, starting with the cornerback tandem of Jalen Burrell and D'Angelo Ross. They're going to need some new faces to step up along the defensive line, though. They only bring back 4 guys with any sort of experience at all, much less starting. The linebackers, though, they'll be solid. They've got Alex Hart and a unit of 5 seniors at linebacker. So they will be able to at least sort of shore up all the issues that they have on their thin defensive line. They've got a solid special team unit that'll help them keep them in some games, but they don't have quite the talent of their opponents for the most part. I think the only games they're going to be favored in are against Incarnate Word and let's face it, a pretty awful FCS team, and FBS newcomer Liberty. They will be underdogs in every single conference game this year. 4 wins is the ceiling, and I'm going to spoil one of my predictions for later. Bob Davie is gone by the end of the season. So with that, Josh, why don't you wrap up the Mountain Division with Utah State and then Wyoming?
Yeah, I got the last 2 teams for this division. So with Aggies up there, Logan, Utah, experience. That's the name of the game. Utah State returns one of the most experienced rosters in the conference. Quarterback Jordan Love started the final 6 games last season as a freshman. He looks to build on his half season of success. He gets the privilege of playing behind a line that returns all 5 starters, as well as having some really talented reserves for that offensive line if they get nicked up along the way. Running back has some experience as well, but was then given a further boost by JUCO addition Darwin Thompson. While the receiving core is a bit of a work in progress to find out who will be the second and third options, they have a great first guy in Ronquavian Tarver. So the pieces are certainly there offensively to compete. Defense lost 2 all Mountain West defensive backs, but they were deep in the secondary a year ago, so they are kind of hoping they can smooth over that. The other defensive position groups are shaping out nicely, especially at linebacker with Suli Tamayeveana. I hope I get that. That's the one name that I really struggled with prepping for this show, but Suli returns after an amazing season a year ago with 111 tackles. Finally, I don't talk about special teams very often on this show, but I have to with the Aggies. One of the best under-the-radar players in the nation is the Utah State kicker. German kicker, German-born guy. Dominique Eberle was a Lou Groza finalist last year, I think he has a great shot at winning it this year, especially if he can connect on some clutch field goals late in games to, say, upset Boise State or even, I don't know, totally derail Michigan State season. So he's a fun kicker to look out for.
On our Big Ten preview, obviously I was like the guy ramming home the Michigan State bandwagon. If they beat Michigan State, gosh, I don't even know. I will be so disappointed in myself. But I'm with you, Josh. I think this Utah State team could be really good.
Yeah, they've got some very, very intriguing pieces. And let's wrap up this division in the Mountain West with me sticking with talking to you guys, and that is Wyoming. So a twist from the last 2 years of enjoying Josh Allen's talent, Wyoming's better side of the ball is clearly going to be defense. They've got 8 starters back that led the whole nation with 38 takeaways, including, here's an interesting stat for you guys. They had 8 takeaways in their bowl game.
A, that is phenomenal. B, I need to push back on something you just said. Quote unquote, enjoying Josh Allen. As a Buffalo Bills fan who watched their preseason game against the Bengals this past week, where Josh Allen's yards lost due to sack were more than his yards passing, I'm not sure that all the Cowboy fans out there really truly enjoyed the Josh Allen experience.
They made it to a conference title game. They played in multiple bowl games. He was amazing to play. I think your Thurman Thomas colored glasses are.
Dude, you know the only glasses I wear are Cornelius Bennett colored glasses.
Anyway, okay, well, this is not a Bills podcast. This is a college football podcast. We're annoying the people in Wyoming wanting to know what I'm going to say about their ball club. But like I said, they returned 8 starters on a defense that had a whole slew of takeaways a year ago. Defensive line returned studs Carl Granderson and Ioana Gafen, to disrupt the quarterback. The linebacking group gets Logan Wilson back, who led the Cowboys with 119 tackles a season ago. Potentially awesome secondary, too, with Andrew Weingard and Marcus Epps as rock stars in the safety position. Corner will have a little bit of a new look, but I like the potential there, too. As for the offense, the line has a lot of experience. The leading rushers are back and some solid receiving talent. But will the new quarterback be able to orchestrate things as well as Matt's hated, for whatever reason, Josh Allen did? Especially when I say orchestrating stuff, it's especially going to be important with a schedule that features 2 Power 5 teams in the non-conference, a crossover at Fresno. Luckily for their contender status, they host both Boise State and Utah State as they try to win the division for the second time in 3 years. Now you can rant about Josh Allen.
No. I don't want to. Putting his the tweets that were doxed from his youth aside, I don't know. We don't need to get into the Josh Allen's pro thing right now. That'll lead me down a road that is far too dark. So let's go worst to first here for the Mountain Division, Josh. How do you see it shaking out?
I got the Lobos finishing last place. They're changing their offensive scheme a little bit, going from a triple option to a spread option. The D also remains a weak point. Kind of feels like making all these offensive changes is sort of an all-in move by Bob Davie. I'll spoil it also. I got him as my first fired, too. 5th place, Colorado State. They are relying on a totally rebuilt defense. I think they'll be able to score some points this year, but I don't like their defensive propositions right now. Air Force, 4th place. This is another team with defensive weaknesses. Coach talked about Worthman a lot. I think he's got a chance to get back to 2016 form, and that'll help the Falcons be more consistent. But, yeah, he struggled so much last year. 3rd place, I got Wyoming. This is the best defense outside of Boise in the division. That'll keep the boys from Laramie sniffing around the division. But with a new starting quarterback and playing Boise in September, so not a lot of time for him to get up to game speed, it's going to be the difference maker and kind of knock out Wyoming early on, because to win this division, you've got to knock off Boise. 2nd place, Ooh, it was tough because they are the most experienced team in the division outside of Boise. But I think it's going to be too hard for Utah State to steal the division since the Broncos are the more talented team, and the Utah State-Boise game is up in the Smurf turf this year. That leaves Boise the most talented team in the league. They got a quarterback with NFL potential. I think the question, it's fair to ask that if they run the tables, would that Oklahoma State win be marquee enough to let Boise be the first group of 5 team in the quote-unquote playoffs?
If they run the see, it depends on how obviously Oklahoma State does in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Because if they are, let's say they're the 4th best team in the Big 12, maybe not so much. But if they're second in the Big 12, if they're first in the Big 12, then yeah, obviously it does. But I still see Oklahoma State finishing behind Oklahoma and TCU there. So it would be tough. It would depend on obviously things like margin of victory, how dominant they were, how dominant they are throughout the conference season. But Coach, how do you see things finishing up in the Mountain Division?
Well, I think New Mexico is going to finish dead last, followed by the Air Force. Then you got the Fighting Bobos. They just took too much of a loss there with a lot of people leaving and graduating, and so there's a tall order there. I think they finished 4th. Then you're going to follow with Wyoming again. Too much of a hole to fill at the quarterback position, so it's going to be a test. And then when you have 2 talented teams like Utah State and Boise sitting right there in your way, I think those 2 are going to be battling out for the division. I think Boise's just super talented this year, and I think they're gonna run the table in the Mountain West.
All right. Well, Coach, you and I are pretty similar here. I have obviously New Mexico dead last as I previewed with them. Bob Davie, he's going to be gone. I think he might be the first coach fired in all of FBS football. Second to last, Air Force, rebuilding year for them. I don't love either side of the ball for them, quite frankly. Obviously, Colorado Springs, tough place to play. Triple option, always a little difficult to defend, but I don't think that they quite have, the same defense that they had when they had guys like, Weston Steelhammer back there at safety. 4th place, Colorado State. I think the game against Hawaii this past weekend just reinforced some of the questions I had about that defense. 3rd place, though, in a bit of an upset, even though I really like Utah State, I think Utah State, Wyoming, or Boise could all win the Mountain Division. I've got Utah State in 3rd. I think that Wyoming might challenge Boise State, or even possibly be outright the best defense in the Mountain West. So I've got Wyoming finishing 2nd. I think Craig Bull is one of the 10 to 12 best head coaches in college football right now, but they still there's a talent gap between them and Boise State. Boise State obviously has the chance to run the table and really make some noise this year, and maybe hopefully at least push us closer to something like an 8-team playoff where the best group of 5 team would be able to really show what they've got against, the rest of the top competition in the country. But yeah, I see Boise State as the number 1 team here. From there, though, let's move on to the West. That means starting with one of the surprise teams from last year, and that is Fresno State. So, Coach, what's going down in Central Valley this year?
Well, it's going down for real. Nice little reference there. Fresno State, again, was one of the biggest surprises a year ago. They improved to 9 wins under their first-year returning head coach, Jeff Tedford. The defense led the way. They had a new coordinator, and what's going to be exciting for them is their secondary and linebacking core returns. Also, the offense is going to return a lot of their key pieces as well. Marcus McMarion is coming back as a returning starter at the quarterback position, and he's going to make the most of his opportunities. So they're going to be a factor in the Mountain West race. They're going to be kind of right there in the mix of things. So, if you want a little background at the Fresno State quarterback position, it's been kind of just a myriad of different starters or a variety of different starters. Well, Marcus McMaryion has finally kind of halted that, and he went into camp as a graduate transfer from Oregon State, and he kind of just took the job over, and they went 9-2 a year ago. He had a 62% completion rate and 137.7 efficiency rating, and he did all of this by not really knowing much of the offense and not really having time to build a rapport. He, in every sense of the word, he kind of winged it. So that was kind of cool. But he has a lot of targets to throw to. Keyshawn Johnson, not that Keyshawn. He will not be demanding the damn ball. Jameer Jordan, Darian Grimm, also Oklahoma transfer Micah Quick, who stood out in the spring. So 4 great targets there. 3 starting offensive linemen return, and they will all line up at different positions, but they do have a lot of experience, and I figure they do a lot of cross training as well. Natanye Muti is moving over to left tackle, which means Kristen Cronk will go to right tackle. Micah St. Andrew goes to the center position, and they will have a 6'3", 343-pounder playing the center. I'm guessing they see a lot of zero nose guards. So defensively, they had a tremendous turnaround a year ago. I just can't get over these numbers. They surrendered just 17.9 points a game and gave up only 320.6 yards per game. Their lowest in either category since 1991. Coordinator Orlando Steinauer, he returned to the Canadian League after just one season in Central California. Burt Watts is the guy going. Steinauer's 4-3 system is going to be something that's going to be intact. So, Watts is one of those coordinators that's not going to completely drastically change. So they get back they're all 3 starting linebackers and all 4 starting defensive backs. You have all conference pick Jeffrey Allison, George Hellmuth, and James Bailey. The Bulldogs boasted this is the best set of linebackers in the league. Also, they have safeties Mike Bell, Juju Hughes. They rank just below Allison Hellmuth in total tackles. They probably have one of the best back sevens in all of Mountain West. So what does it mean? Well, Jeff Tedford, he was a National Coach of the Year finalist. He became Fresno State became just the second FBS team to go from double-digit losses to double-digit wins, going from 1-11 and turning it all the way around and going 10-4. So what's it going to look like for year 2 in the Jeff Tedford era? It's going to look like much of the same. I think they're going to be explosive on offense. They're going to be returning a lot of talent at the linebacking core, a lot of talent in the secondary. So they're going to be very, very – they're going to be more than formidable on defense. They're going to have let's just say they're going to have a dynamic playmaking defense that will be very exciting, be very fun to play in, and be very fun to watch, and will be extremely productive as well on top of that. They're going to be trying to take that title away from Boise State. They split the regular season finale and the Mountain West Championship game in consecutive weeks. That was kind of an odd phenomenon. So they have a softer non-conference schedule, and it's going to be interesting. And don't be surprised if Fresno doesn't repeat as divisional champs.
All right. Well, let's next go to Hawaii, which is a team that came out this past weekend and beat Colorado State 43-34 in quote-unquote week 0, behind 418 yards and 3 touchdowns from Cole McDonald. Even though that they had to replace their defensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator, starting quarterback, running back, top 3 receivers, 3 starting offensive linemen, and 3 starting defensive linemen, and top 3 safeties. A lot of new faces on this team, but clearly Nick Rolovich's run and shoot offense is off to a good start. Offensive coordinator Brian Smith improved this unit last year, and they're going to build off of that. Wide receiver John Ursua is back after dealing with an injury last year. He's a game breaker, but also watch out for Kamoku Noah and Devin Stubblefield. They should put up some big numbers in the receiving game as well. The line is solid. They're built around offensive tackle Asodi Eli, but they've also got a couple new faces on the 2 deep. In fact, the Warriors signed 4 JUCO offensive linemen during this past cycle. On the defensive side of the ball, they have a new coordinator, Corey Batoon. He's coming over from FAU, and he is, like the man he used to work for in Lane Kiffin, better known for his recruiting than his schematics on the field. They do get 3 of their 4 top linebackers back. They're led by Jelani Tavai. As their corners have a fair bit of experience as well, but the safeties are going to be all new, and they are relying on JUCOs yet again. This time, Manasi Time, but also the defensive line. They've got 5 JUCOs that they brought in during this past cycle on the defensive line. So obviously, Nick Rolovich is trying to get some warm bodies in there on the defensive side of the ball. They still gave up 34 points this weekend against Colorado State, but they are an improving unit. Their specialists, though, they need to improve off of last year. Last year's levels were some of the worst in all of FBS. They were truly awful in the kicking game. They were 4 for 9 on the season in field goals. 4 for 9. That is just absolutely horrendous in this day and age. And they had 0 touchbacks on kickoffs. There's nowhere to go but up for them, but they've got a gigantic mountain to climb. They've already got a win under their belt, and they get to do the Service Academy double dip in weeks 1 and 3. They play Navy at home in this coming week, and Army at Army on week 3. In conference, they get both Fresno State and San Diego State on the road. So those are probably 2 losses right there. But you know what? They look pretty good week 1. And based off of that and the improvement that, I've seen in them, I'm going to say the Rainbow Warriors, they're going to be bowling this year. 7-5 for the Warriors. But let's head from there to the biggest little city in the world, Reno, Nevada, where the Wolfpack coach going to be might be some trying times this year.
Yeah, I think so. But what's going to help the Wolfpack is having Ty Ganji at the quarterback position with Jay Norvell. When they struggled a little bit, and that a lot of it was due in part to pulling Ty Ganji and pulling the plug on that experiment too soon. He decided, and he learned actually from his mistake, and he plugged Ganji back in. And they were one of the conference's best numbers-wise. Recruiting, can it help get the defense going? Those are kind of some of the storylines. But Ganji, 2,700 yards and 25 touchdowns, only matched with only 11 interceptions. He's back for a senior season. This is a perfect system for him to flourish in, and he'll have a lot of help at the skill position. So offensively, they should be actually pretty good, and they should be pretty productive. And they have sophomore McLean Mannix at receiver, 778 yards and 6 touchdowns, freshman All-American last year. Junior Brandon O'Leary Orange, 618 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was 3rd All-Conference candidate. Could be Caleb Fossum. He's coming back fresh after missing a lot of 2017 with injury. Andrew Sellis, Travion Armstrong, and Dayan Henry also should be some guys that could be extremely productive in that wide receiver unit, which is going to be by far their best position group in the entire program. They have a big bruising tailback Kelton Moore, 855 yards and 4 touchdowns. Kind of found his way midway through the season. Didn't know much about it, but he kind of burst onto the scene. And when they needed a run threat the most, Jackson Kincaid is also somebody that can come in as kind of a change of pace for Kelton Moore. When offensive line wise, you lose all conference tackle Austin Corbett to the NFL. That obviously leaves a significant hole in a program like Nevada, but they returned 3 linemen who started games in 2017. Most notably their center, Sean Krebs, and they add also 5 offensive linemen to the recruiting class. So again, they have fresh talent. So when you inject fresh talent into your program, you don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. For Nevada, I guess it's something that they are going to find out and going to find out the hard way. So defensively, they run a 3-3-5 stack, which is not ideal for me. I don't love that because I think you leave yourself extremely vulnerable to the run. And that's something that Jeff Castile is known for. But if you're going to run a 3-3-5, you need to be bigger. You need to be big and physical up front, none of which Nevada is. But in this year's recruiting class, they've got guys that fit that bill, but they're going to need some immediate contributions from some of the guys they recruited. Got some good JUCO talent. One-time USC nose tackle Kevin Scott is going to be one of those guys that they're going to look forward to. You have 2-time all-conference defensive end Malik Reed, 6'1", 250. Certainly not big and physical enough, I don't think, but he's going to make the move to linebacker. So they just need to, as Wendy's once tried to find in the mid-'80s, they need to try to find the beef. They just, again, they're going to have to lean on their secondary. Those 5 guys in the backfield are going to have to kind of be some playmakers. But you have some guys that could do it. Free safety Damon Baber. He was an all-conference talent. He had 3 multi-interception games in his career. Fellow senior Asani Rufus. He was kind of having one of those all-conference seasons, but he broke his leg and missed the final 3 games of the season. Sophomore Nafai Sewell was also, as a true freshman, kind of eye-opening. So what does this mean? What is kind of the final analysis for Nevada? Going to have a great receiving core, some questions on who's going to play where, and how many young people they're going to have to contribute up front on both sides of the ball. That's going to kind of be the issue, the biggest issue and the glaring issue for the Wolfpack. So I'm not going to say it's going to be a really tough year. It's going to be challenging with a lot of questions to answer. But, if these young guys end up playing above their head, this could be a surprisingly good year for Nevada. If they don't, it could be a rough season with a lot of growing pains and a lot of learning happening. So either way, it's going to benefit Nevada in the future, having to inject so much youth within their starting units. So schedule-wise, they have all their toughest opponents at home. So that lends itself to bowl eligibility being a possibility. So, again, they're just going to have to rely on youth.
All right. Well, let's head down then next to one of the favorites, obviously, in the West that has been one of the favorites for the last couple of years, and that is San Diego State, Josh.
So the Aztecs, obviously this team is built on the rush, and they've had some amazing guys go through there, Donnell Pumphrey, Rashard Penny. But I think they're going to be another running juggernaut again. The line returns gobs of talent, and I think they're probably the best offensive line in the league, frankly, yet again. And Jawan Washington is a proven back. He had 759 yards last year as a reserve. I also think that Christian Chapman, he's a pretty reliable option at quarterback. I know that his yards aren't great, but his decision-making is, with 35 touchdowns to just 11 interceptions in his career. Even if he is just kind of that game manager type, those are actually really hard to find. So to me, Chapman is a big plus. The defense was 21st in scoring last year, and they were big factors in the Stanford and Arizona State wins. Tariq Thompson returns after an awesome freshman year and was actually a freshman All-American. Linebacker Ronley Laka. I hope I'm getting that right. Laka? It's Laka.
Laka.
Yeah. He's healthy again. This young man's healthy again after getting banged up last year. Defensive line's is really scary. It's anchored by tackle Noble Hall. So I only picked 3 guys to highlight, but I could have gone on and on with the D that the Aztec has. So I posed this with Boise State, but if they can run the table, I think SDSU also has a legit shot at becoming the first group of 5 team to be in the playoffs because they travel to the Farm. They have Boise State in a crossover, and they host a second Power 5 club in, Arizona State.
Yeesh. Well, Josh, you get to stay in the Golden State and head up from the best program out here, or one of the best programs out here in the Mountain West, to probably one of the worst, San Jose State.
Yeah, so the story of the Spartan season comes down to scoring. They were 126th in scoring a year ago, put up just 15.8 points per contest. So having a new coaching staff, having a new scheme debut last year probably played a part, but the overall lack of talent was the primary reason for such a struggling offense. They had just terrible quarterback play all of last season. So I'm not sure the O can improve much this year, especially with still being unsettled at quarterback and a newly rebuilt offensive line, which is a shame because the wide receiver group is deep and running back Tyler Nevins is a really talented kid. Defense also got rocked by injuries, so just being healthy should improve that side of the ball. All 3 starters in the 3-4 defensive line are back, but the secondary will be extremely young. And lastly, special teams, believe it or not, is the best phase of this team, with Bryce Crawford having the accuracy and the leg strength to potentially play at the next level. FCS, UC Davis, and home games against Hawaii, Colorado State, Army, UNLV, and Nevada are the best chances to win games for this team. But if they can find a way to win 3 of those games and improve their overall record by a game, that would go a long way of seeing a multi-year rebuild be actually on track.
All right. Well, Coach, let's finish it out. And nice and quick here with UNLV. Are they finally the best team in Las Vegas? Can they finally beat, what is it, Bishop? One of the bishops.
Bishop Gorman?
Bishop Gorman. I always want to say Bishop Girton was one of the high schools in New Hampshire. Bishop Gordon.
No, yeah, Bishop Gorman. Well, Modern Day took care of Bishop Gorman
this past weekend. I know.
Yeah,
I was watching that game. They kind of manhandled them.
Yeah, they embarrassed them. So, so there's no reason to think that the Rebels aren't a good bet to be the best team in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, that doesn't really bode well conference-wise. He's just Tony Sanchez is 12-24 in his 3 seasons at UNLV, but they've improved each and every year. So they have not been bowl eligible yet. They lost at home as a 45-point favorite to Howard, and they've lost back-to-back games to in-state rival Nevada. Those are some of the fun facts about the running Rebels. They're not running very much. So quarterback Armani Rogers garnered as Mountain West Freshman of the Year honors despite missing 2 years with 2 years. Yeah. See where my head's at. Despite missing 2 games with a concussion, him coming back again gives that offense a huge boost. And that boost is because at the quarterback position, they have had 11 different season opening starters in a 14-year span. So think about that stat for a minute. So, he was one of the only players in the nation to average at least 140 passing and 75 yards rushing per game last season. That list included Lamar Jackson, Quentin Flowers, Nick Fitzgerald, and Khalil Tate. And then, of course, Monty Rogers. So, again, a really good talent at the quarterback position. Rogers actually finished 6th in the Mountain West in rushing, but throwing the ball was, let's just say it was a mystery. He had a better shot of playing the roulette table than completing a pass last year. He only completed 52%, just over half, and he had 6 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, so not a great year for him. They finished 18th in the nation in rushing, and they should have a potent ground attack again this year. Lexington Thomas comes back. He was a first-team all-conference. He finished with 1,336 yards and 17 scores himself. They'll have an offensive line led by Justin Polu and right tackle Nathan Jacobson, both all-conference candidates. So they have some talent in that group as well. So can Armani Rogers, can he be accurate throwing the ball? Can he be a threat at all throwing the ball? Completing just a tick over 50% and having just as many interceptions as touchdowns does not bode well for your offense and having a one-dimensional scheme and quarterback. So he's going to have to improve in those categories if UNLV is going to be the running rebels on offense. Defensively, Tim Skipper, who spent the previous 3 years at Florida coaching the linebackers and running backs, is the new defensive coordinator. And let's just say with these numbers I'm about to read you, he's going to have an interesting and fun year. So the unit he is taking over, they allowed an average of 31.8 points per game and 460 yards per game. And they were especially bad against the rush. They ranked 123rd nationally in yards allowed per game at 240. There's only one team that had fewer sacks than them in all of FBS, and that was Air Force. Let that sink in.
Those are not very good stats to have.
No. But they have 7 starters returning, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing looking at those stats. But Cade McCoy and Bailey Lalagi and senior Dalton Baker are 3 names to kind of watch out for on this defense. For Skipper, he's going to be more aggressive with his blitz packages, and he's going to have what's described as exotic defensive packages to try to force more turnovers, which only managed just 7 interceptions all year long. So that's one of my favorite adjectives when describing defense is exotic, because I don't really know what they consider exotic. Like, is he going to line up like 3 people in a gap, and is he going to be like, a 5 technique over here and then like 2 3s stacked on each other and like a wide defensive end, and like his linebackers at 12 yards and his safeties over top of the center? I mean, what's considered exotic? I don't really know. It's just kind of one of those funny like buzzword adjectives. He's going to have an exotic defense. Anyway, that's my soapbox. But special teams is truly special in a good and bad way. Evan Pantels was 17 of 22 and 28 of 28 perfect on PATs. He had a leg injury. He returns. He's going to do all the place kicking and punting, something that you don't see. They have a UTES transfer, Hayes Hicken, which is a great name, to challenge him on some of those duties. Thomas, Presley, and corner Jericho Flowers, as well as Mekhi Stevenson, are going to look to bolster a return game that averaged just 16.7 yards per return on kickoffs and only 7.2 yards on punt returns. So, yikes. That's the good and then the ugly. They skipped the bad altogether. They just went straight to ugly. So they have a favorable home schedule. They have non-conference games against mighty UTEP and Prairie View A&M. They have a conference slate that would be without the Boise State, Wyoming, and Colorado State. So if they're ever going to go to a bowl, this is the year. Where they have so much talent returning offensively, defensively, they're going to be more exotic, whatever that means. So that has to bode well with a favorable schedule. So the goal is 6-6. We'll see if they get there. I don't know. It just depends on how exotic we get and how much blitzing we have and how well Armani Rogers can throw the ball. That's going to kind of hinge on those kind of factors.
All right, Josh, let's wrap this up. Worst to first in the West.
Yeah, I got San Jose State finishing last. Offensive questions galore in this rebuild. Hawaii fifth. I like that the run and shoot is back, but the defense still isn't going to be good enough to totally compete this year. Fourth place UNLV, some really nice pieces, but I'm not sure about that defense coach talked about or Armani Rogers' passing game. So the building blocks are there in Vegas. I just don't see them being able to compete that much. Nevada, third place. They are among the best clubs in terms of skill position sets in the division, but they need that offensive line to gel as well as have some of the new pieces on defense pan out to truly be a contender. To me, this is a two-horse race, though. Second place, I got Fresno, a boatload back on that offense and the back seven of the defense. If that reconstructed defensive line pans out, the Bulldogs could easily find themselves right back in the Mountain West title game. That leaves my champ San Diego State, outstanding running attack, outstanding defense. They are kind of like Stanford 2.0, but that feels really insulting because these Aztecs beat Stanford a year ago. And who knows, maybe they'll do it again this season up at the farm.
Maybe they will. Coach, worst to first.
Josh, you and I agree on most of this list. San Jose State, again, massive rebuild. So it's going to be kind of rough.
Is it even a rebuild if they've never built anything in the first place?
Maybe it's a first-time build.
Jeff Garcia, baby.
Interesting. Okay.
He ain't walking through those doors, Josh.
He is definitely not. But his wife can. She that would be good. Playmate. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stop.
Yeah, Jeff does well for himself.
Yeah, let's just say that. Hawaii. I love the offense, but can they stop anybody? That remains to be seen. I don't think so. UNLV again has some nice pieces in different places, and then again has a giant, huge, probably the biggest question mark I've ever seen defensively. They have quite the tall order, so they are not quite tall enough to fulfill that order, so they're going to finish fourth. I love Nevada, love the way they compete, and love what they have in the skill positions, as Josh said and as I previewed, but too many holes up front on both sides of the ball for me to really feel comfortable at allowing them to contend, but they will have a really nice season. I think number two, by the slimmest of margins, is going to be the Aztecs. I think Fresno State has the juice this year to repeat as division champions and try to get back what they did not get against Boise State a year ago. So I think they're going to make a return trip to that championship game.
All right. Yeah. Well, like you guys, San Jose State obviously dead last, and it's a pretty big margin between them and fifth place. I am a little bit bearish actually on Nevada. I've got a lot of questions about that team this year, and I see them finishing fifth in the West. I've got UNLV fourth. Them and Hawaii, I kept flip-flopping. I'm still flip-flopping in my mind right now. I think they're both going to be right there at the edge of bowl contention, 6-6, 7-5 for both of them. I really like what I saw out of Hawaii this past weekend against Colorado State, and that actually bumped them up for me. So I've got Hawaii finishing third. With Fresno State in second. Bulldogs, obviously, veteran team, very solid team, but I still believe in Rocky Long. I think that he is a fabulous, fabulous coach, and that team's going to come to play every single year. So even though Fresno was the division champ last year, I still believe in San Diego State. So Mountain West champ, Josh, You've got Boise State and San Diego State in the title game.
I do, and I am taking the Aztecs to edge it out. I just think their defense is as good as Boise's defense is on paper. I think San Diego State's is just a next level defense. It looks like a Power 5 defense. And then that run.
Did we lose?
We appear to have lost Josh. I'll edit this out.
Wait, you don't hear me?
We lost you for about the last 15 seconds.
Oh, I'll just repeat it again. Sorry, that's so weird. My mic wasn't muted. Nothing.
Yeah, it was just weird. We lost you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll give you the lead in.
Yeah.
So Josh, you've got I believe Boise State and San Diego State as your title game here in the Mountain West.
I do, and I'm going to go with defense winning a championship. Boise State's defense is awesome. San Diego State's is next level. San Diego State's defense looks like it could be right at home in the Pac-12. This is a really, really good defensive team. I love that rushing attack.
All right, Coach, how about you? You've got Boise State and Fresno State in your title game.
Yeah, and I said that Fresno State was going to look for that revenge. I don't think they're going to get it, though. I think Boise State is way too talented this year. Brett Rippon is going to be far and away above. I'll just go ahead and say it now. Brett Rippon's going to be Conference Offensive Player of the Year.
Coach, I'm going to say ditto to what you just said. Boise State, Mountain West champ, Brett Rippon, Offensive Player of the Year. Josh, do you have Brett Rippon as your Offensive Player of the Year as well, or have you got someone else?
Well, it was tempting to go with San Diego State's star running back, but Brett Rippon is just going to put up insane numbers. I think he's going to make a very nice career on Sundays. He's got that skill set, and this is a passing sport now. Sexy quarterback numbers are usually beating out sexy running back numbers.
Yeah, the only other guy I even considered here was Armani Rogers, but I need to see that he can actually throw the ball before I'm going to throw that out there for him. Defensive Player of the Year, Josh.
This is one of the easiest awards for me to give out this year. I think Andrew Weingard, the Wyoming safety, is so clearly head and shoulders above anyone else in this league in terms of playing that position and being a difference maker on defense. I thought this was easy. I'm going to be stunned if anyone has a pick other than that.
Coach, who have you got?
Well, you're not going to be stunned on my behalf because I'm not picking anybody other than him.
Yeah, we can just, again, I could just say ditto for the second question in a row because he is the class, probably, he's going to be pushing All-American for a safety. He's that good. He is Weston Steelhammer good.
He might win the Thorpe.
He might. Coach of the Year, Josh.
God, this one was tough because down in the South, Rocky Long, Jeff Tedford, I think their programs have set themselves apart from the other teams that are division. And then up north, Brian Harrison has done that as well. But then you have, does Matt Wells at Utah State or Craig Bowl at Wyoming, do they put a run together and create a great argument for them winning Coach of the Year? But I just think, to me, exceeding expectations and contending for that division is going to be the difference maker. So I'm going to go with Matt Wells at Utah State.
Coach?
I'm gonna go with Jeff Tedford in keeping the momentum alive and continuing and winning his second division title in as many years. So he's going to be mine, even though he falls short in the conference title game. I'm going with Mr. Tedford.
Oh, I like this because we have three different answers. I've got Wyoming finishing as the runner-up in the Mountain and losing Josh Allen. I'm taking Craig Bowl as Coach of the Year here. I think this Wyoming team can finish, potentially 9-3, even 10-2, and I think they will have, along with Boise State and San Diego State, among the best defensive units in the conference, and should be able to, compete with anyone on any given Saturday. So, Josh, you don't care about Rookie of the Year. Coach, have you got a Rookie or Freshman of the Year that you're intrigued by?
No rookies.
The one guy I'm going to look out for, Tyler Vanderwall, who's going to be the quarterback at Wyoming. along with Craig Bull. I think that Vanderwall has the potential as a freshman to come in and really take a stranglehold on that position for the next 3-4 years.
And then he can go and be a Bills quarterback.
Hey, man, I don't even know what to say at this point about that. First coach fired.
Smashing tables?
First coach fired. Maybe I can smash tables with Bob Davey because he's not going to have anything else to do on the weekends about halfway through the season. Anyone else taking anyone besides Bob Davey?
Well, here's my deal. Bob Davey, you can't do and be investigated for what he's being investigated for and lose all in the same time. So he'll get popped well before his for his off-field stuff, well before his record will ever allow that to happen. And then, of course, I think this would be a short-sighted thumb move, but Brett Brennan maybe has a chance of getting fired because San Jose State might be an absolute dumpster fire. I don't.
This is what his second year there.
Yeah, I don't agree with it. I think it would be the height of stupidity if they did it, but again, they might think too highly.
Who's San Jose State gonna get?
I don't know. They might call me.
Sonny Dykes ain't walking through that door.
I know.
Sonny Dykes is he employed?
Either way, he ain't walking through that door.
So in the move,
no, he is. He was hired. He's in. I want to say the Sun Belt because at one of the teams that I previewed.
Yeah, I thought he was at. Isn't he Louisiana Tech? I think.
No, that's where he used to coach. Skip Holtz is still there.
I don't know.
I thought he's at SMU, maybe.
Yeah.
He took over for Chad Morris, right?
Yep.
Sonny Dykes is, in fact, yes, the coach of SMU.
We got there.
So you want to hear this? I'm going to end the show on an absolute bombshell. You ready for it?
Hit it.
So the Fighting Track Stars of Kansas, okay, they're going to work out an epic trade in which David Beatty goes to San Jose State, installs a track, and turns the program around. And Brett Brennan takes over the Jayhawks, covers the track, and they start contending for the Big 12. How does that sound?
Sounds terrible for literally every program involved. My first fired is Bob Davey, but Nick Rolovich also has a pretty hot seat, I think. Fortunately, it's all in the run and shoot. It's going to be
another program that really shouldn't put him on the hot seat.
Yeah, no.
I think the big problem for Hawaii, though, is they went to a bowl their first year, and they're like, ooh, Rolovich has us back. And then they won only 2 games a season ago. So fan bases don't like those roller coaster type experiences.
Well, speaking of roller coasters, this offseason has definitely been one. We've had some highs, we've had some lows, but gentlemen, football is just around the corner. We will be back later this week with our Week 1 preview podcast, guys.
And our previews for the Independents. Everyone wants to know what I think of Liberty.
I don't know. I don't know if anyone wants to know anything about Liberty, quite frankly. We're not going to go there at this moment. We will go there, though, however, later on in the week when we hit you with our Week 1 predictions. We'll be looking at all the big games, some under-the-radar ones, some spread formations. We'll be back with some quick slants. All the good stuff's coming back. I'm pumped for the season. I know you guys are pumped for the season. Josh, any final words?
No.
Coach?
Hey, Independents, if you want to get a proper preview on our show, join a dadgum conference.
And all I've got to say in the wake of the Hawaii-Colorado State game, run the damn ball, Bobo!
Run the damn ball, Bobo!
So,
and I think we covered Week 0 real well, gentlemen.
I know you're really into that UMass game.
0.
I watched literally every second of UMass. Their victory was amazing. I've already broken down the tape 3 or 4 times.
Josh, Josh, was the telecast or did you get the all-22 film?
Oh, I got the All 22 film, and I got to be honest, I think the Minutemen can potentially be the best high school, college, or pro team in the state of Massachusetts. That's how much. Oh, wait, there's the Patriots. Okay. So they could be the second best team in the state of Massachusetts.
Out of all the
oh, wait, there's Boston College. They could potentially be the third best team in. Oh, no, BU might have a better team.
Williams College.
They are a team in the state of Massachusetts.
They might be
Amherst.
unequivocally the best Minutemen program ever. So out of all the teams that have the Minutemen as their mascot, they are definitely the best.
I think that is something we can all agree on, and a perfect note to end on for today. So on behalf of our own offensive coordinator here in Nashville, Tennessee, Corey Burton, and our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting up there in the Windy City, Josh Cook, this is the Professor in Nashville saying so long and see you next time on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast.
Run down ball, Bobo.
Thanks for listening to the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. To get in touch with the show, email us at illegalmotionpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at illegal_motion.